Oye, muéstrame tu tierra, mami. Vamos juntos para allá. Bueno, mira. Oye, llévame al campo, la tierra donde naciste. Carretero tira su carreta, que recuerda donde viviste. Contemplarte en la sierra, contemplarte en los valles, y lo hacemos juntos para capturar los detalles. Tierra, tierra, muéstrame tu tierra, mamá. Tierra, tierra, muéstrame tu tierra, mamita. Tierra, 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 tierra. Bueno, mira de nuevo, estamos viajando lejos, pero vale la pena. Recogemos recuerdos y siempre buscamos terrena. Esto es tuyo y siempre lo será. Siempre será tu tierra y siempre lo recordarás. Óyelo, tierra, tierra, siempre lo recordarás. Tierra, tierra, es tu tierra, mami. Tierra, 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 tierra. Bueno, mira, juntos vamos para allá. Tu tierra. Escucha, aquí es tu tierra y siempre la será, mamá. Aquí es tu tierra y siempre la recordará. Óyelo bien, mamita, y siempre la será, oye. Aquí es tu tierra y siempre la recordará. Siempre la recordará. Aquí es tu tierra y siempre la será. Vamos para allá, mamita linda. Aquí es tu tierra y siempre la recordará. Vamos para allá. Tierra y siempre la será, oye. Tierra y siempre la recordará. Camina, como dicen, tierra y siempre la será. Siempre la será, mamá. Siempre la recordará. La tierra, 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 tierra. Vamos para allá, para tu tierra, mamita. Tierra, tierra, siempre será tu tierra. Tierra, tierra. Camina para allá, camina. Por siempre aquí estará. La, 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 la. Oye, por siempre aquí estará. Por siempre aquí estará.
up? What up? What up? One sec. One sec. Oh shit. What am I showing? You greased it. Pickle jar jar. What up, everybody? Hope you guys are all doing well on this wonderful Wednesday. It's Wednesday, my dudes. La pasión, ¿qué tal? And from my all my Latin American viewers, ¿cómo va? Happy Hump Day. Bring Kermit back. Thank you so much, everybody, for your kind words about the music. At a certain point, we'll post a kind of playlist. Only the real ones remember Kermit. True. She greased it up with her fingers. How much did the pickle jar need to pay for that debate? Okay, folks, we're going to start with something very important, which is in the last stream, we had a bunch of little chatters who I understand to be from the community known as the Andrew Wilson debating community. They have a community, it's called Andrew Wilson. Okay? And in the Andrew Wilson debating community, sometimes they do this little thing. You know, sometimes I do. Gina, thank you so much for the super chat. You guys are the best. This is Gina. Gina's always in the replies. Always in the replies. Always in the comments. Does her job. That's why we love Gina. She does her job. Thank you, Gina, for the super chat. Really appreciate it. Anyway, last stream, we had a bunch of people from the Andrew Wilson debate community. That's what they call it. The debate community of Andrew Wilson, also known as the Crucible, the Andrew Wilson Crucibles debate community. That's the name of it. I didn't come up with a name. That's the name. And they were like, go debate Andrew Wilson. Go debate Andrew Wilson. You won't. You're too scared to debate Andrew Wilson. And I'm just hitting here like, what the hell? What the hell? Do they not know the lore? So I don't think that the Andrew Wilson debate community, the Crucible debate community, I don't think that they understand the lore. There actually is Pisco Andrew Wilson lore. And so I'm someone who always wants to bring the facts to any situation. So this is me providing the facts. Oh my God. Editor. Providing the facts to the Andrew Wilson debate community about what the lore is. And once you know the lore, you can apply the lore in the future. So here it is. All right. Here's the story. So this is a guy named Andrew Wilson. He has a debate community. It's called the Andrew Wilson Debate Community. And he goes and debates on very many different streams. He goes and debates people on Piers Morgan. He goes and debates people on Wick TV. And on his own platform, his own show, there was a time in which the Andrew Wilson Crucible Debate Community was hosting their own debates on their own forum. And so he's a debate mega lord. But he's not very smart, very dumb guy. But he has these tactics, right? That people who aren't aware with these presuppositional debaters and like this objective morality meme, they're not aware of those pathways. And so he can sort of aggro, out tactic certain people who are just like, aren't caught on to the whole presuppositional meta, like the Darth Dawkins type people. And he's just like an upgraded version of Darth Dawkins, not very bright. But anyway, his followers, the Andrew Wilson debate community, they have this ego that he's some amazing debater when he's dog shit. And so they come in my chat and they're like, huh, you won't debate Andrew Wilson. But they don't know the facts. They don't know the lore. And they don't know that it ain't me that's preventing a debate from happening with Andrew Wilson. Do you guys want to know the truth? The real truth? And nothing but the truth? Go look at my post that I just posted on the YouTube posts. Confirmed. Andrew Wilson does not want to debate Pisco, demands thousands of dollars up front. Andrew Wilson, if Pisco pays me, I will debate him. A commenter, this might be from the Andrew Wilson debate community. This doesn't look good, dude. Looks fine. Pisco needs to bring something to the table. I just said I'd debate if Pisco the nobody compensates me for my time. This was, before. Let's see if he's changed his mind. On another post. Sounds weird. Paleo ChristCon, that's Andrew Wilson's handle, is not known to debate dodge. Right? He has a reputation. He's the guy who goes and debates everyone. I say, well, the opportunity has risen multiple times between us and third parties wanting to organize, and the answer has been consistent. I must pony up thousands. Andrew Wilson, that's correct. It pisses you off and makes me happy. So what I'm telling you is the truth, and it's Andrew Wilson is confirming it, right? Andrew Wilson is confirming that he won't debate me unless I pony up thousands of dollars, and that multiple third-party organizations have tried to organize it, and he has stood fast to this principle. Right? So this is just proof. Someone, perhaps from the Andrew Wilson debate community, says, did you charge that Eric Peterson, Planet Peterson guy? Strange debate there? Just curious. No, I don't charge everyone if I have some interest in the topic or it's being hosted by platforms I support. Pisco, though, will always be charged. So there's a special Pisco rule. So this is Andrew Wilson from his debate community saying Pisco, different than everyone else, he has to pay. And other people can't pay it for me. It has to be my own personal funds, which is weird because obviously money is fungible, but he needs me to be the one who gives him the money. Maybe it's some kind of like sexual dominant thing. I don't know what it is, but that's what he has demanded. Because other organizations are like, yeah, we'll pay for it. He's like, no, has to be Pisco. And then finally, the cherry on top, and there are other instances of this. Don't make me get other logs and receipts and stuff. But Andrew Wilson says, ats me, after there's been this horrible tragedy of one of his friends was in an accident, ats me to do emotional terrorism on me and to use this tragedy of his friend and to play on my emotions and make me look like a jackass by saying, new discounted rate to debate me. Look, new discounted rate because my friend was in a crash. It's only $500, one day only. So that has been the consistent position over the course of months. It has not changed. I'm not dodging any debate with Andrew Wilson. It's his own position, which he has confirmed multiple times, that he will not debate me unless I pony up thousands of dollars out of sheer principle. I'm not going to do that. That's outrageous. There is a threshold by which I would be willing to pay Andrew Wilson $500 is if someone gives me $8,000. So if someone gives me $8,000, I will give $500 to Andrew Wilson to debate him. But that's the threshold. Those are my rules. Also, no strings attached, right? Like, just debate me like you would debate someone like Wick TV. He debates Wick TV, right? He goes to debate Wick TV. He goes to debate these dumb college girls or whatever, or dumb college boys on these different shows. He goes to debate Destiny. So he goes to debate people bigger than me, smaller than me, people never heard of, randos. I'm the only one who has this special little rule that is like consistent across multiple third parties, consistent across time and space. But there you go. That's the truth. And y'all can cope all you want. My guess is Andrew Wilson will hold fast to this because he doesn't want to be seen as like backing down on some rule that he set out. But I would encourage, if you're a fan of the Andrew Wilson Crucible debate community, I would encourage you to go talk to Andrew Wilson and say, hey, this is kind of strange. Why are you doing the discount one day only $500 discount on your rule never to debate Pisco because your friend got in an accident? That's kind of weird. That's the lore. That's the lore. That's the truth. That's the absolute truth. What can I say? I showed you the receipts. We're going to just go over them real quick again. If Pisco pays me, I will debate him. That's a conditional. The opportunity has risen multiple times. His answer has been consistent. I must pony up thousands. Andrew Wilson, that is correct. It pisses you off and makes me happy. He's saying that's true. And Pisco will always be charged. I didn't do anything special. I didn't go out of my way to insult his kids. That's something that other people have done. People like this Brittany Venti person, right? You would think, okay, if someone has gone out of their way to attack his family, to attack his wife, to attack his kids, okay, that would make sense, maybe, because you're so outraged now. But I've not done that. There's just no evidence of me. And I apparently am the only person who gets this treatment. Because again, he debates randos. He debates Wig TV. He goes on all these other shows to debate people bigger, smaller, randos, college people. So this is all proven. I've just proven this. Probably just scared. I think I just proved that, right? This is now a proven thing. Petition to bring back Big Papa Fascist. So yeah, and that's the Andrew Wilson lore. How you guys doing? Pretty crazy times we're living in, hey? Pretty crazy times. You seen this shit on Twitter? So, libs of TikTok, what the conservatives are now doing is they're walking into Starbucks to fuck with baristas and be like, you have to put Charlie Kirk on my cup because we're doing this to honor Charlie Kirk. It is kind of cute to see the conservative movement. They actually have this very diverse set of coping mechanisms and grieving mechanisms, which I, in some respects, think is good, right? They're making rap songs. They're creating art, right? They're doing candlelight vigils. They're going to honor him by ordering different drinks at Starbucks. Now, there's a bunch of other bad stuff they're doing to honor him, which is this massive industrial cancel culture. But I do appreciate the kind of artistic tendencies of a lot of these people. As a former barista, I can confirm, even with tips, we will never be paid enough to do your cringe political nightmare performance for you, and we will give you decaf. This is their form of community street theater to honor Charlie Kirk. And I think that these are great artistic outlets. I totally support that kind of stuff. But when you start involving other people in your little charade here, and you start going out to provoke people and put them in difficult spots for just to make them mourn you're mourning, why don't you make your own little Macklemore rap video? You can do your own little artistic display. You can make your own dedication video. But why are you fucking with these baristas? Can you leave them alone, weirdos? And they're specifically doing this so they can just cancel a bunch of baristas. They have the video ready, put Charlie Kirk on the cup right now. And if you don't put Charlie Kirk, because obviously their name's not Charlie Kirk, if you don't put Charlie Kirk, and they don't want to probably be a party to whatever social media campaign you're doing, they're trying to smile through it. This is some cringe shit, guys. Just go get your coffee. If someone was doing this while I was getting my Dunkin', I think that would be grounds for self-defense of some kind. Like, I'm in line and you're like fighting with a barista. Please put Charlie Kirk. Just order the coffee and get out. And go do your little public display of mourning elsewhere. We don't need you to do this. It's like, do business with us and stand your ground. Stand your ground and pay homage to our Lord and Savior Charlie Kirk. Give me a break. They want to enforce compliance with their Charlie Kirk warning industry, using the threat of cancellation and government sanction as a tool. And then they're going to start adding Starbucks. Look, one of your associates refused to put Charlie, and probably because the government is willing to use its powers of coercion against private actors. They're doing it with the schools. They're doing it with private businesses. We just did the whole look at the crypto stuff, crypto AI stuff, and the minerals with the UAE with Aaron yesterday. With all these private actors, they have no problem like coercing and using official powers to promote their private interests and political interests. And so who knows? Maybe Starbucks would bend the knee and be like, yeah, y'all didn't put Charlie Kirk on a cup? You're fired. And it's pretty funny, I think, watching the hypocrisy, but it's also kind of sinister, really sinister when you think about it. They're like, you must believe as I do. And that's how we're honoring Kirk's memory of free speech, is you have to believe what we believe or we're going to fire you. We're going to prosecute you. I mean, they're literally saying prosecute you. The other day, to remind you guys, Pamela, she said, there's free speech and then there's hate speech. And we'll go after you if you do hate speech. And then Donald Trump's like, yep, that's right. And you know what, Mr. Reporter, sir? You've been mean to me, so that's hate speech. You see? That's my Rob Noir impression. You see? You see? So they're bringing back hate speech. And they're saying, yeah, we'll go after hate speech. That's the highest law enforcement agent in all the land. Both of them, right? The Attorney General and the President of the United States. Yup. We believe in hate speech laws and we're going to use them to prosecute our political enemies. And then they redefine hate speech to mean not like, hating you based on some immutable characteristic, but like, you disagree with me. You're ABC and you say real facts about the administration. And so we're going to, maybe someone should go after you. They should go after you, Mr. ABC man. It's very, very sinister. Sometimes all you can do is laugh, but it really is very sinister. And now this industrial cancel culture claims, perhaps, hopefully they'll stand tall, another victim, which is random baristas across the nation who are like weirded out by this death cult, an obsession with this mourning culture. Captain America asks, can I ask a random illegalish question? I just applied to renew my passport, and I know my protest activities have me and my protest partner flagged and under surveillance. Is there any chance they might use either my social media or my protesting to refuse my renewal? They might. I think it would be illegal to do that, and my guess is they probably won't do that, but they're doing illegal stuff. The part of the law that they wanted to implement about that stuff, where with like material support provisions, that was not added to the law, but I don't put it past them to institute some rule in the State Department, but I doubt it. I'm very much doubt that they're going to do that to you. If they do, let us know, and we'll add you to the list of First Amendment victims. But I think you'll be okay, probably. Do I think it's legal to do? No, but has that stopped the administration from doing stuff like this? No. So no one can tell you that you're safe. So I can't help you there. But I can say that I think it's unlikely, given it's a lot of work sometimes to do this. That's a thing, right? China has they have like the infrastructure perhaps to do some of this stuff, but the people in charge here are just kind of losers. You think MAGA will cancel ChatGPT since it can never know he's dead? The information cutoff was September 2021. Is that true? Won't they just update it? ChatGPT, oh my God, and Kash Patel, speaking of incompetency in administration, this is one of the reasons why, like, I said the other day, I'm not sure if this is a good thing or a bad thing. Frankly, I don't know. You guys will tell me. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but the incompetency of these guys sometimes makes me a little hopeful, like, okay, these are the people I have running shit. But then I'm just like, wait, we're all on the same plane. And then they do actually have some kind of competent people behind the scenes doing some stuff. So this isn't like me definitively saying that it's okay and better because we have some dummies running their stuff. But sometimes it does make me laugh.
Remembering your oath to tell the truth, did you ever tell Donald Trump his name is in the files?
I have never spoken to President Trump about the Epstein files.
Did you ever tell the Attorney General that Donald Trump's name is in the Epstein files?
The Attorney General and I have had numerous discussions about the entirety of the Epstein files.
Yes or no,
reviews conducted
bitch.
by our team.
Did you tell the Attorney General that Donald Trump's name is in the Epstein files?
And we have released where President Trump's name is in the
It's a simple
attorney's
question.
file.
Did you tell the Attorney General that the President's name is in the Epstein files?
During many conversations that the Attorney General and I have had on the matter of Epstein, we have reviewed
The question is
painstakingly
simple.
who
Did you
can
tell
be-
the Attorney General that Donald Trump's name is in the Epstein files? Yes or no?
Why don't you try
Hell
spelling it
yeah.
out?
Yes
I'm gonna
or
mock-
no, Director?
Use the alphabet.
Yes or no?
No, A, B, C,
Director,
D, E, F. Don't
it
wanna
sounds
do
That's
it?
the
you don't wanna
FBI
tell us. Did
director.
you tell the Attorney General that Donald Trump's name was in the Epstein files?
Why don't you try serving your
Director,
constituency
did
by
you tell the
focusing on
Attorney
reducing
General
violent
that Donald
crime in this
Trump's name-
country and the number of pedophiles that are
Director,
legally
reclaim
harbored
my time.
in sanctuary
Legally
cities
harbored
in
in-
California?
Reclaim
I'll
my
work with
time.
you on that. Do
Regular
you wanna
order, Mr.
work with us
Chairman.
on that?
Director,
I
reclaim my
belong to
time.
the gentleman from California.
Did you tell the Attorney General that Donald Trump's name is in the Epstein files?
Question
Yes or no?
has been asked and answered.
You have not answered it, and we will take your evasiveness as a consciousness of guilt.
Who thinks that looks good for Kash Patel? Can I just ask that? I left a super chat months ago saying that SCOTUS would activate their Korematsu trap card, and you scoffed at it. You feel different now? You say you're a legal realist, but think like a formalist. SCOTUS would activate their Korematsu trap card, and you scoffed. What's the Korematsu trap card exactly? Help me understand it, but thank you for the super chat. And then I'll respond to the thing about Destiny real quick that someone put in the chat as well. But I do want to make sure that I'm appropriately, the super chats get priority, guys. And I do appreciate the super chats. And there's one pending super chat person I have to check their messages. I know that whoever you are, don't feel bad. I'll check my messages, I promise. Look at that drinking of water. Don't ever drink water when people are asking you about pedophiles, okay? You just leave the water and wait like 10 minutes before you can even touch the water. I've been in the game for years. You don't think racial profiling for immigration enforcement is walking towards the Korematsu direction? Well, you're talking about the case, this recent case out of the Ninth Circuit about the different enforcement stuff. I do think that they didn't squarely face an equal protection challenge. Here's the difference, right? I do think that you're correct that it seems to accept a kind of propensity theory for purposes of reasonable suspicion, in which resembles some of the, I think, rationale behind the actions at Korematsu. So that I'll grant you. Here's why I think potentially we're not going to be facing a total Korematsu type situation. The first and I think most important one is, frankly, just in terms of capacity and logistics. That's my realism brain coming on there. So yes, I think that you could see some sort of similar type-ish, if you look at it the right way, policies that start to resemble some of what's going on in Korematsu. but I don't think you're going to fully see the kind of internal deployment that you saw in Korematsu. If that was my position, that you're not going to see that. And frankly, I think that you won't. In terms of from a legal perspective, they didn't squarely face an equal protection clause analysis. This was a Fourth Amendment analysis, not a 14th and Fifth Amendment challenge. And then frankly, Kavanaugh's concurrence was a concurrence. It didn't obtain a full majority of the Supreme Court. No one else signed on to it. And I think that it is an immigrant exceptional type framework that they're trying to apply. And so I think it's quite unlikely that you'll see this Supreme Court accept a racial pretext justification outside of the immigration context in the same way that you're seeing in the immigration context. And I think that's a signal. Does that mean that Trump won't try to do it? No. Does that mean that the Supreme Court will ultimately hear a challenge like that? Probably not. I just think it's unlikely that they'll squarely accept the Korematsu holding in the criminal context or in the internal war context. That's just my opinion. You might disagree. Sorry, we were talking about something else. I think that the logic of the opinion would lead to a broader holding than what is said in the Kavanaugh concurrence. I don't think that there's a reason why it should be limited to immigration detention. And obviously, the Trump administration is using the immigration power beyond its traditional scope to do other kinds of internal enforcement actions. So there's definitely cause for concern. I just don't think they're going to squarely, like you could say something like they'll effectively give Trump the power to do all kinds of crazy stops. I probably would agree with that. I just don't think that they'll squarely hold that Korematsu is justified itself. Like stopping, for example, Venezuelan U.S. citizens, with U.S. citizens with Venezuelan backgrounds and putting them in camps. I don't think that they would accept that, even this court. That's a prediction. And I don't think it's one that's informed by formalism. I think if you were to accept the formalism of the recent Supreme Court decision, if Kavanaugh's concurrence is indicative, I think that would lead you to accept that it's more likely that they would accept Korematsu. So I think it's counter to what you're saying, right? Like I would say that the formalism of Kavanaugh's concurrence would lead one to suggest that racial protectional stops are more backed. But I think for realist reasons that it probably won't have the scope of affirming Korematsu. You get me? I think I answered that. And so I scoffed then, perhaps. I still scoff. In terms of the explicit holding affirming Korematsu, I don't think that that's particularly likely. But in terms of carving away Fourth Amendment protections such that it gives authoritarian powers to the president, yes. And making more room for unlawful what would otherwise be thought of as unlawful detentions, yes, I do think that. Yeah. But good comment. Thank you for the super chat. All right. On the Destiny stuff, I saw someone say they put up the Destiny clip at the congressional hearing or whatever. Just like I stood by Hassan Piker on the global entry thing, I will absolutely stand by 100% with Stephen on his right, his First Amendment right to say whatever the fuck he wants. I actually think a lot of people are misconstruing the things that I've heard from Stephen. So substantively, the whole thing about fear, right? And we're going to look at an opinion today that I hope will help explain why I think this. The whole Republicans should be fearful. That actually, for me, it's not a true threat, but it's also like not different than what I'm hearing from a lot of right-wing people. Like, you're next. That's what I'm getting from a lot of right-wing people are saying, you killed the negotiator, you killed the neutral guy, you killed the moderate. Now you're going to see what's going to happen. That is, in so many words, saying that you should live in a context of fear. You should be fearful either of private or government reprisals. And those have to do with like, not, I don't know if the word, like it's specific coercion, but it's to say that it's good. It's good that Democrats and libs are more scared to say their thoughts publicly, right? That's kind of what they're suggesting with those comments. So I don't think that what he said there is at all conceivable as a true threat, call to action, incitement in any respect, and certainly not in the legal respect. Certainly not in the legal respect. So there's already, just number one, I think there's a lot of misconstruing of what's actually been said. And I've said this, by the way, also of Hassan Piker. I'm not being particular about this. When Hassan Piker said that thing about Rick Scott, that is not a call to action. That is not incitement at all. That is not a true threat at all. When he said, if you really wanted to do something, you would kill Rick Scott, that is not incitement at all. That is not a true threat at all. I've been 100% consistent. I support the constitutional right to post cringe. Yeah. Doesn't mean I agree with it. And y'all know I disagree with shit that both Hassan and Destiny say, but I defend absolutely that they should not be silenced. And I find it really, really cringe that our congresspeople are taking time out of their day to soy out and say that there should be consequences for private citizens exercising their First Amendment speech in this way. I think it's cringe. And I think everyone who's principled sees this. This is actually, I think, a huge misstep from MAGA. If you really wanted to, I don't know, consolidate power or whatever, why would you give the left such a great thing to unite on? And what the left is uniting on, and I'm seeing it, is the overreaction, the authoritarian moves by the Trump administration and the unhinged shit that right-wing people are saying. Like, everyone seems to be agreeing, like, okay, the Trump administration and all their sycophants and all their influencers are totally unhinged. And it's uniting the left in a way that, there's been a lot of bickering, but this is uniting them. Super, 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 super cringe. So yeah, I don't think that any of these are true threats. I don't think any of these are, but I want to remember, like, let's use this framework that I've shown you before. And we're going to take a look at this case in a second to distinguish it. The first question we ask is it speech? The second question is the restriction content-based? Is it a content non-neutral? And then the third is it a category of unprotected speech? The first one of, what Stephen is saying, is it speech? Absolutely. It's expressive conduct. It's literally speech. Yes, it is speech. Would banning it or punishing him, government punishment from the government, be a content-based speech? Yes, of course. You would be going after Stephen. You'd be going after Destiny for the communicative import of what he's saying. You'd be going after the speech for its communicative power, for its communicative significance, for what the message says, not where it's being said or under what circumstance. No, you would be going after him for the content of it. So it's by definition not content non-neutral. Sorry, it's not content neutral, this proposed restriction. And what Elon Musk said? Elon Musk said he should be imprisoned for it. So the last thing we ask is, okay, it's a content non-neutral proposed restriction, imprisoning someone for the content of what they're saying, that Republicans should be scared or whatever. The third question is this a category of unprotected speech? Well, is it defamation? No. Is it obscenity? No. Is it a true threat? No. Is it incitement? No. Why is it not incitement, right? And we'll read this opinion to get a better understanding of some of these. This is from the Supreme Court from '86. So you can understand the full scope of what's allowed under the court's precedent. Under the court's precedent, you're allowed to say that it was good that someone was assassinated. You're allowed to say that it was, you hoped to see more of it. You're allowed to say, yeah, I think that assassination of X group is totally morally justified. And the more I see it, the more I'll cheer. That is totally protected speech. You're allowed to call for and say that it should be the case that the American government is violently overthrown and a tyrannical government is put in place. That is all fully protected by the First Amendment. What makes something incitement isn't how offensive it is or how much it directly supports or justifies violence. I'm going to say that one more time. What makes something incitement isn't like how much it supports violence, how much it justifies violence, how much it says it's good that violence happens. That isn't what makes something incitement. And this case will help us see that. Rankin versus McPherson. There are specific elements for incitement, and the chief element missing in the Stephen case, there are others as well, is imminence. Imminence. Okay? It needs to be an imminent call to lawless action. You, right there, go do this right now. You know, this is good. Do more of this. Encouraging people in the act when it's happening right now. Imminence is one of the big things that distinguishes the Brandenburg Standard from the pre-Brandenburg Standard. In the pre-Brandenburg Standard, if you argued in abstract in favor of violent revolution and communistic revolution under the Dennis v. Smith standard and other related cases, you could be jailed. Right? You could be jailed for being a member of the Communist Party of the United States. Because why? In principle, you advocate for illegal violence. But you don't do it imminently. But the pre-Brandenburg Standard was like, okay, if you're part of this Communist Party, we can throw you in jail. It wasn't protected at all. Because down the line, you say that there should be violence, or in abstract, there should be violent overthrow. But after Brandenburg, the better test, the more protective test, it's not enough to say violence is justified. You know, at some point, violence will need to happen. And that, we even support violence. The Westboro Baptist Church supports violence. Westboro Baptist Church, they say that soldiers should be killed, that it's good when they die. But that is not imminent lawless call to action. And even if you said, yes, we love it when our members do, some criminal act, that is not an imminent call to lawless violence. Imminence is super important to distinguish. Because if it wasn't something to distinguish, then we would still be in the pre-Brandenburg days where you could just like jail people who, according to the government, have inherently criminal or violent ideologies. Oh, because sometime down the line, that violent rhetoric will lead. Do you start to see the problems with that standard for removing imminence? Do you start to see the issue with that? Okay, so listen to this. If someone said, so Hassan says conservatives need to be stabbed and slit open is not a call to violence. The question isn't is it a call to violence? This person who just made this comment isn't a very smart person. Low IQ. We're talking about the legal standard for incitement. And we notice that one of the elements is, in fact, imminence. Now, he's so triggered that he doesn't actually hear words, right? Something could be a call to violence, but so long as it is not an imminent call to violence, if it is not an imminent call, then it is not sanctionable under incitement. But yeah, that's an example of some of these people, right? They can't actually, they're so enraged, they're so maudlin that I would say something that's just like absolutely correct and true and based, that they just type without hearing first. Also, I didn't see Hassan say that, by the way. Just to be clear. You must steal. Is that incitement? No. Do you understand that? Or sorry. You must stop the steal is not incitement by itself, right? This is the problem. You can't just tell whether something is incitement. People will say that, right? People will say, well, what about stop the steal? What about you can't just tell if something is incitement based on the words alone. Okay? Words alone. Now, maybe you could have some words that are so direct, right? This is an imminent call. Right now, go do this. Okay? So maybe in the context of sometimes words alone, if the words are so clear that it's imminent. But this is TOC. This is TOC. We need to fight. Go fight, right? The same words can be incitement in one case, not the other. By the way, in addition to imminence, there are other elements, including intent. You need to intend, and the government would need to show that you intend someone to take your lawless call to action, your imminent lawless call to action. You need to intend that. So just saying we need to stop the steal, absolutely not by itself incitement. Now, you can imagine some context in which words by themselves might be incitement without any other context, like where you are, who you're talking to, where you're talking to them in the context of what you're calling them to do. Okay? These are the circumstances that would give you the case that this in fact is an imminent call. Now, if you say, we need to stop the steal and, violent measures need to be taken, even that by itself, not incitement, right? Because that's down the line. It's not imminent. It's usually, right? It's the circumstances around the speech. What's going on in your mental state. So you're at the courthouse. You're saying, come on, guys, we got to take the courthouse. Imminent, in the moment. There are people around you, right? So you intend to put them into the courthouse. Whereas if you were at a stream and saying, someone's got to take care of this courthouse, man. Sometime, man. Something needs to happen. Not incitement. Now, that might upset you to hear. And MAGA people in the chat, all of you, please rise up and show everyone how triggered you are by what I just said. I'm just telling you the truth. The truth is the truth. This country, we have a First Amendment, and the incitement standard is narrow. And people's myopic focus on the words outside of their context is confusing, because you can have some words that are arguably more evil, arguably more accepting of violence, definitely more offensive, divorced from their context, that nonetheless are not incitement, whereas words that seem more neutral could be incitement. Let me just give you the room, MAGA people in the chat. If you're in the chat and you're a MAGA person, you have the room. This is the space right now to be triggered by what I just said. You can be triggered. And we want to give you that space. And so, you know what? I'll just give you a minute. Put all your triggered comments in there. Imagine the chat. Imagine the chat. All right, that was a minute. All right, so I'm just going to repeat it again. So for the MAGA people, you just heard what I said. I'm going to repeat it one more time. Incitement, that standard does not attest on how accepting of violence speech is. It's not a test of how evil the speech is, or how much of a tendency it has to influence someone to do lawless action. Though that is part of the test, you could have words that are more likely to induce people to commit violence than words that are technically incitement, then the words that have greater tendency to influence people's actions would not be. In order for something to be incitement, you need to have all of the elements. And so don't just think when you're like, but you said stop to steal. Like, no, stop to steal by itself, absolutely not incitement. Nope. Because you're only looking at the words in isolation. And to think of a kind of words in isolation that themselves would be incitement, it would have to be something kind of more absurd, where it's like, I'm calling on all my followers right now to go outside and go, that kind of thing, where you're embedding in all of the evidence of imminence and intent into the words themselves. So incitement, again, not just looking at the tendency of speech to influence people to evilness, how close the speech is to endorsing violence, how the speech might be seen as evil or reprehensible. That it's not a just loosey-goosey test where you're like, how violent is the speech, right? How negatively do we construe the speech? And hopefully this case that we're going to take a look at will help, because the words here are pretty... This is the Supreme Court in the 80s. The words here, and this is Justice Marshall, Thurgood Marshall, joined by Justice Brennan, Blackmun, Powell, and Stevens. Stevens, a Republican appointee, but turned out to be a liberal of the court, and by some of the more liberal members of the court. Scalia dissented with Rehnquist, but this is the court. The court. Justice Marshall delivered the opinion of the court. The issue in this case is whether a clerical employee in a county constable's office was properly discharged for remarking after hearing of an attempt on the life of the president, "If they go after for him again, I hope they get him." Pretty wild speech, right? This is more... So you saw this guy, right, on Piers Morgan saying to Destiny, "I heard you say to your co-host Pisco," whatever he said about when I asked him, "Did you want that bullet?" Or I asked him, "Did you hope it was successful?" Or something like that with respect to Trump back in the day. This is way more direct than that. If they go for him again, the president, right? The sitting president, I hope they get him. This is expressing hope that the president of the United States be killed. On January 12th, 1981, respondent Meredith McPherson was appointed a deputy in the office of the Constable of Harris County, Texas. The constable is an elected position who functions as a law enforcement officer. At the time of her appointment, McPherson, a black woman, was 19 years old and had attended college for a year studying secretarial science. Her appointment was a conditional for a 90-day probationary period. While the constable's office is a law enforcement agency, Constable Rankin testified that other law enforcement departments were charged with the day-to-day enforcement of criminal law. The involvement of his office in criminal cases, he testified, was in large part limited to warrants in bad check cases. Although McPherson's title was deputy constable, this was the case only because all employees of the constable's office, regardless of job function, were deputy constables. She was not a commissioned peace officer, did not wear a uniform, and was not authorized to make arrests or permitted to carry a gun. McPherson's duties were purely clerical. Her workstation was a desk at which there was no telephone, in a room to which the public did not have ready access. Her job was to type data from court papers into a computer that maintained an automated record of the status of civil process in the county. Her training consisted of 2 days of instruction in the operation of her computer terminal. On March 30th, 1981, McPherson and some fellow employees heard on an office radio that there had been an attempt to assassinate POTUS. Upon hearing that report, McPherson engaged a co-worker, Lawrence Jackson, who was apparently her boyfriend, in a brief conversation which, according to McPherson's uncontroverted testimony, went as follows. Question: "What did you say?" Answer: "I said I felt that it would happen sooner or later." Question: "Okay, and what did Lawrence say?" Answer: "Lawrence said, yeah, you agree with me." Question: "Okay, now when you, after Lawrence spoke, then what was your next comment?" Answer: Well, we were talking. It's a wonder why they did that. I felt like it would be a black person that did that because I feel like most of my kind is on welfare and CETA, and they use Medicaid. And at this time, I was thinking that's what it was. But then after I said that, and then Lauren said, yeah, he's cutting back on Medicaid and food stamps. And I said, yeah, welfare and CETA. I said, shoot, if they go for him again, I hope they get him. McPherson's last remark was overheard by another deputy constable who, unbeknownst to McPherson, was in the room at the time. The remark was reported to Constable Rankin, who summoned McPherson. McPherson readily admitted that she had made the statement, but testified that she told Rankin upon being asked if she made the statement, yeah, but I didn't mean anything by it. After their discussion, Rankin fired McPherson. McPherson brought suit in the United States District Court for the Southern District of Texas under 42 U.S.C. 1983. This is a section of, by the way, of federal law that makes it, that like basically gives you a cause of action to sue for a violation of rights. Alleging that the petitioner Rankin, the boss, right, in discharging McPherson, had violated her constitutional rights under color of state law. She sought reinstatement, back pay, costs and fees, and other equitable relief. The district court held a hearing and then granted summary judgment to Constable Rankin, holding that McPherson's speech had been unprotected and that her discharge had therefore been proper. The Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit vacated and remanded for trial on the ground that the substantial issues of material fact regarding the context in which the statement had been made precluded the entry of summary judgment. On remand, the district court held another hearing and ruled once again, this time from the bench, that the statements were not protected speech. Again, the Court of Appeals reversed. It held that McPherson's remark had addressed a matter of public concern, requiring that society's interest in McPherson's freedom of speech be weighed against her employer's interest in maintaining efficiency and disciplining in the workplace. Performing that balance, the Court of Appeals concluded the government's interest did not outweigh the First Amendment's interest in protecting McPherson's speech. Given the nature of McPherson's job and the fact that she was not a law enforcement officer, was not brought by virtue of her job into contact with the public, and did not have access to sensitive information, the Court of Appeals deemed her duties to be so utterly ministerial and her potential for undermining the office mission so trivial as to forbid her dismissal for expression of her political opinions. However ill-considered Ardith McPherson's opinion was, it did not make her unfit for the job she held in Constable Rankin's office. The court remanded the case for determination of an appropriate remedy. We granted certiorari and now affirm. It is clearly established that a state may not discharge an employee on a basis that infringes that employee's constitutionally protected interest in freedom of speech. Even though McPherson was merely a probationary employee, and even if she could have been discharged for any reason or no reason at all, she may not nonetheless be entitled to reinstatement if she was discharged for exercising her constitutional right to freedom of expression. That's so interesting. Remember when I was saying, you don't have a right, right? This is the global entry case. You don't have a right to global entry. Well, do you have a right to your job as a probationary employee when you can be discharged for no reason? No. But just because you have no right or entitlement to global entry, just because you have no right or entitlement to your job as a probationary officer, that doesn't mean that you're not allowed to sue and win for a violation of the First Amendment. If the reason that you're being discharged or you're being revoked global entry is for exercising your constitutional rights, even though there's no right or entitled privilege to probationary job, or in the case of Hassan, global entry, it doesn't mean that you're just allowed willy-nilly to fire a public employee because of their speech. The determination whether a public employee has properly discharged an employee for engaging in speech requires a balance between the interests of the employee as a citizen in commenting on matters of public concern and the interests of the state as an employer. The balancing is necessary in order to accommodate the dual role of the public employer as a provider of public services and as a government entity operating under the constraints of the First Amendment. So remember, this is assuming that this is First Amendment protected speech. Obviously, if the speech is not protected by the First Amendment, there would be no problem in firing someone because of it, right? Like if you're doing speech that is not protected by the First Amendment, then you don't need to do a balance. So this is assuming the speech you have isn't already unprotected. So this is after you've done the analysis of the categories. There's a special sort of context, which is the employer, whether the public employer can fire you on the basis of this. And if your speech is already unprotected, obviously you can be fired for unprotected speech because it's not protected. On the one hand, public employees are employers. concerned with the efficient function of their operations. Review of every personnel decision made by a public employer could, in the long run, hamper the performance of public functions. On the other hand, the threat of dismissal from public employment is a potent means of inhibiting speech. Vigilance is necessary to ensure that public employers do not use authority over employees to silence discourse, not because it hampers public functions, but simply because superiors disagree with the speech. The threshold question in applying this balancing test is whether McPherson's speech may be fairly characterized as constituting speech on a matter of public concern. 7. Even where a public employee's speech does not touch upon a matter of public concern, that speech is not totally beyond the protection of the First Amendment, but absent the most unusual circumstances, a federal court is not the appropriate forum in which to review the wisdom of a personnel decision taken by a public agency allegedly in reaction to the employer's behavior. Whether an employee's speech addresses a matter of public concern must be determined by the content, form, and context of a given statement as revealed by the whole record. The district court apparently found that McPherson's speech did not address a matter of public concern. The Court of Appeals rejected this conclusion, finding that the life and death of the president are obviously matters of public concern. Our view of these determinations in the courts below is limited in the context by our constitutional obligation to assure that the record supports this conclusion. We are compelled to examine for ourselves the statements in issue and the circumstances under which they were made to see whether or not they are of a character which the principle of the First Amendment, as adopted by the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment, protect. Why do they say this, right? This is because this is a state action. This is the state of Texas. And the First Amendment says Congress. This is what the Joel guy was saying. The First Amendment only says Congress. Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech. And Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. True, but the First Amendment, as adopted by the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment, protects liberty, right? Quote, liberty. And that liberty includes the First Amendment. That's the incorporation theory. Considering the statement in context, as Connick requires, discloses that it plainly dealt with a matter of public concern. The statement was made in the course of a conversation addressing the policies of the new presidential administration. It came on the heels of a news bulletin regarding what is certainly a matter of heightened public attention, an attempt on the life of the president. While a statement that amounted to a threat to kill the president would not be protected by the First Amendment, the district court concluded, and we agree, that McPherson's statement did not amount to a threat punishable, or indeed that could properly be criminalized at all. Quote, this is from the district court. A state would face considerable constitutional obstacles if it sought to criminalize the words that were uttered by McPherson on the day the president was shot. We do not think that respondent's remark could be criminalized. The inappropriate or controversial character of a statement is irrelevant to the question of whether it deals with a matter of public concern. So what the court is saying here is that this statement is protected by the First Amendment. This is protected speech. If it was not protected speech, we wouldn't even have to be running this analysis of the employer-employee First Amendment test. But the court is specifically saying this is protected. Even the lower district court, they're saying the state could not criminalize this if they wanted to. Ipso facto, the state can't criminalize what Destiny said. Destiny's statement, I would argue, is less offensive than this, less explicitly endorsing violence than this. So you can't throw him in jail. It's not a true threat. And it's not incitement because it doesn't meet the standards for incitement. I don't know if they analyze incitement specifically in this case, but this is not an incitement even close to incitement. Continuing on, debate on public issues should be uninhibited, robust, and wide open, and may well include vehement, caustic, and sometimes unpleasantly sharp attacks on government and public officials. Just as erroneous statements must be protected to give freedom of expression the breathing space it needs to survive, so statements criticizing public policy and the implementation of it must be similarly protected. Because McPherson's statement addressed a matter of public concern, Pickering next requires that we balance McPherson's interests. So at this point, they're doing the Pickering test. And this is the public employment test. And so this is, not as important to our analysis because there's no public employment in the various different contexts that we're talking about. Although, think about it though, right? There could be some of the people who are being canceled are public employees. Some of the people who are being outed by groups like Libs of TikTok in this industrial cancel culture, some of these folks are public employees that are being fired. These folks probably have decent First Amendment cases, right? If they're saying things, if they're, for example, just quoting Charlie Kirk, how would this Pickering analysis be any worse than what's happening in this case? Especially if they're just like ministerial functionaries. Perhaps the nature of their employment would be more involved. Maybe teachers are analyzed different than these people who are just like copying words. But in terms of the speech analysis, it feels like there could be some grave First Amendment concerns when it comes to the cancellation of public employees who are using their speech in this way. And I would be interested to see if any lawsuits emerge out of this whole cultural cancel culture. Industrial cancel culture. Fuck. That's the case. So, taking a step back, what are we to make of this? One, the people in my replies on Twitter don't know jack shit about the First Amendment. All right? They don't know anything. Everyone talking about threat this, incitement that. None of the statements that I've seen, and I'm willing to debate anyone on this, constitute a form of illegal speech. And if you're calling for people to be imprisoned for protected speech, that's cringe. That is super cringe. And I don't care if you're Hassan Piker, if you're Destiny, if you're Mike from PA, if you're Nick Fuentes, if you're anybody. I will vocally stand up in support of your rights. And I will condemn the government that is trying to throw you in jail or prosecute you for hate speech. That's another category that doesn't even exist in the American context. Prosecute you for hate speech? That's the Republicans. That's the Trump administration. That's Pamela Bondi and Trump, not just Pamela Bondi, Trump as well. I'm doing the thing. Any questions? Thank you for the super chats, the follows, the respect that you put on my name. Remember, folks, this is a great time. Follow me on TikTok, Pisco Liddy. It's so weird. I had 15,000 likes on one of my TikToks and like thousands. And then I just posted one and it has 0 views. Is China trying to fuck with me? What's going on? It's got like no views. But it's at Pisco Liddy on TikTok. You have hate in your heart? I don't have any hate in my heart, bro. And if you are a conservative, conservatives only, you will have priority. Anyone who disagrees with me on this, but you can't be some soy left guy who sounds like every other soy left guy. You need to be a conservative or MAGA person who disagrees with me. Add your TikTok to your video description links. I have been doing that. That's a Trump quote. Oh, they have hate in their heart. That is a Trump quote. You're right. It's just a skill issue. Maybe it's a skill issue. But yeah. Any questions before we move on to? We'll just watch a little bit of this. Just a little tiny bit of it. What do you think of the dissent's public concern analysis in Rankin? I didn't read it. But even then, I doubt they're gonna. This will be probably a disagreement on pinkering, but it's not a disagreement on the speech being protected speech, probably. As I would understand it, I doubt Scalia at all would be like, yeah, this is unprotected speech that you should be able to ban. But if I'm being honest with you, I haven't read the dissent. Debate Pam Bondi. I will. We're scheduling it on the Katie Miller podcast. Wait, what's Steve Miller's wife's name? Is it Katie Miller? I am tempted to pretend to disagree with Pisco. Doobie. You don't need to disagree. We all see what you're doing, Doobie. Everyone sees it. That's too bad, but it is a disagreement on the application of pinkering. Yeah, pickering, yeah. That's not as interesting, though. What's interesting to me is the kind of unanimous agreement that justifying the assassination or attempted assassination and hoping for the death of someone is protected speech. And even saying out loud, yeah, I hope this happens. I hope he dies. I hope he gets killed. That's protected speech. That's the kind of point that I'm bringing it, not for the pickering analysis. But thank you. I'm a humble debate bro. Sometimes I just like to argue. True. What Doobie said was free speech. Oh, and then there was just like, there are some people, man, I don't even know if they're real humans. Maybe they're fake. This is crazy, this shit. Some of these people are not even real. One second, I'm going to show you something. So I'm like, Destiny has the complete legal right to say everything he's saying about Charlie Kirk and the right wing. Authoritarian scum like Elon Musk want to jail their political opponents for hate speech, quote, hate speech. No big deal. 200,000 views almost. 1,000 replies. No big deal. Just a little viral. Then this fucking genius says, isn't Elon allowed to say everything he's saying about Destiny in the same way Destiny is allowed to say everything he's saying about Charlie Kirk? Why does that make one of them authoritarian scum and not the other? I'm like, what? This might be one of the dumber replies I've ever read. I'm not saying that Elon Musk doesn't have the right to say what he wants to say. He has the right to say this. I just think it's authoritarian to say this. And I'm not even saying that what Destiny's saying isn't authoritarian. I'm just saying that Destiny has the right to say what he wants to say. But Destiny isn't calling for the jailing of other people for their speech. Elon's the one saying it. I'm like, what? I'm like, I didn't say Elon isn't allowed to say what he's saying about Destiny, dipshit. Then what's the issue? You cannot be this stupid. My tweet is criticizing the authoritarian shit Elon is calling for, not saying that Elon isn't allowed to say authoritarian shit. At this point, I have to be convinced that like the people who are getting views and likes and shit on the MAGA side, their IQ is low double digits. You cannot be this stupid. Why did Pisco say that Elon Musk should be put in jail for saying that? But Destiny, I mean, like, that's literally how dumb they are. Bro, your side doesn't even know what a woman is. Bro, Blossoms, do you want to come debate what a woman is? Open invitation. Come debate what a woman is. Blossoms, join the Discord and we'll debate what a woman is. In Charlie Kirk's memory. Everyone in the Twitch chat. Blossoms is about to come join and debate what a woman is. And we'll get his definition of woman. And then we'll poke at it a little bit. What do you think, Blossoms? Poggers. Colin, please debate what a woman is. You can totally win. Blossoms is a very cute name. A woman is a featherless biped. I'm straight, so whatever makes me hard as a woman. Join the arena. I love that shit. We'll see if Blossoms accepts my invitation. You don't have to, Blossoms. It's cool. We got other shit to do as well. But I just find very often they'll say, like, what is woman? And, like, you guys shooters, you know what a woman is. And I'm like, all right, let's debate it. Let's debate what a woman is. And they're like, no. Maybe you need some gender theory. Maybe you need some gender theory. We need the arena battle. Come on, Blossoms. It's your chance to prove everyone wrong. Can they reject the invitation to testify before Congress? Oh, these are like the platform CEOs? Probably not. I think those are probably enforceable. If they're subpoenaed. They can probably reject an invitation, but if they're subpoenaed, probably not. Probably not. And for business reasons, I'm sure that they'll probably want someone to do it. I think their invitations. Saying gender theory makes me throw up. And like these people are like so they're. It's not even like a rational thing. It's just like they have these neural pathways in their head. So people like JMac, they hear gender theory and they just have this violent, instantly like, they get so pissed. Can Congress hold a witness in contempt like a judge can and send the witness to court? So Congress can vote under the current obstruction of Congress statutes. They can vote to certify one of these things to the DOJ, and the DOJ can act. But Congress has no prosecutorial authority by themselves. But the typical procedure for obstruction of Congress has been to vote to send basically a letter to the DOJ saying, please investigate this. And the DOJ will, as a matter of practice, investigate it. And under this administration, almost certainly prosecute it if it's pro-Trump. Okay, we don't see him Blossoms anymore. He's gone. He's gone. Got scared. So we'll watch a little bit of this the soy pill. This is the soy pill from the Soy Pill Show. Talking to Sitch and Adam. And let's see. We'll just watch a little bit of this and we'll see how good it is. I muted it. I'm very sorry about this. Are you mad? You must be mad. Why are you mad?
Hello, everybody. How are you doing, Sitch? How are you
I'm
doing today?
Fantastic.
Great, cool.
Today
got a
we're
guest.
joined by
Yeah.
the Soy Pill. Look at this. Hey, Soy Pill.
Hey, how's it going?
What's
I
up
noticed you
with
have,
the
I just
beanie?
noticed. We probably should have said this before. You have the green screen. Is there supposed to
Yes.
be something there, or is it just the green
So I'm not
screen?
using my virtual cam on my
Okay.
streams. I've been trying to. I have a little like doofy looking avatar drawn in MS Paint, and it goes up behind me. But right now it's not the virtual
Gotcha.
camera. So yeah, now you just get me looking slightly
So-
more incompetent and stupid than normal.
Why don't you introduce yourself for our audience so they can kind of know where you're coming from? Obviously, our audience already knows us,
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So I make video essays. Bernie progressive, I guess, if you want to immediately peg my politics. I kind of tried to make it my brand to reach out to people that
What do we think of this tank top? I think it's pretty cool. The beanie, the tank top. What do we think?
disagree in ways that I'm like, hey, if you don't agree with this, I think I can explain it in a way that at least is better than the straw man that the media's been throwing at you. And then also I shout and scream at people at debates, which is the complete antithesis of that. But what I did for this was I saw you guys on Wick a couple days ago, and I saw you saying things I didn't agree with, and I was like, oh, I want to go in, I want to yell at them, blah, blah, blah. And then because I've had more time to think about it, I was like, all right, I don't know much about these guys. I don't know their politics. In fact, I'm purposely not going to look up as much as I can because I want to.
What is their politics? These guys are their political thing is, I'm going to say it, virtue signaling. Their politics is talk shit about soy lefties, people who can't fight back, and then block everyone who disagrees with them. That's their politics.
If I have to yell and scream, I want it to be because of things said in this conversation. I want no preconceived notions. I just want to come in and explain my piece and see if you guys will at least hear me out, not necessarily change your mind. But yeah.
You implied there was some straw manning going on with Wick. What was that, or what on Wick did you disagree with?
Yeah, I don't know about straw. I mean, I probably said that. I don't remember that specific thing. And that's
we try not to straw man. We obviously try to get everyone's argument down correctly. So
yeah. So my basic
contention
was, it seemed to me, and by the way, like I said, because I don't know. Correct me if I'm assuming your position.
He's already like, and you have to do this with Cincinnati. You have to like rub their back and kiss them on their forehead. You're like, I don't know, honey. I don't know who. I'm not saying that you moved my shoes. I'm not saying you moved my shoes. I don't know where they are. I know I probably left them there, but I'm not saying you moved them. I could have moved them. I could have forgotten. Like, that's the kind of shit you have to do when you're talking to Adam. Otherwise, he'll block you.
But it seemed to me that the ideas you were putting forward were, because the left calls Donald Trump a fascist, paints the right wing as a fascist ideology, they are complicit or responsible in some way for the killing of Charlie Kirk. And my issue with that was not that the left doesn't do that. I do that. My issue was whether or not, one, if it's true that I would consider Donald Trump a fascist, or at least fascist in his rhetoric and actions, and two, why that would then be responsible for the assassination.
Well, the thing that bothers me a lot about the entire situation is the left has been on this mission for like maybe 20, 30, maybe 40 years, where they believe a lot of racism that marginalized people suffer is because of negative stereotypes, like negative stereotypes of black people, negative stereotypes of gay people. So they've gone out of their way to minimize these negative stereotypes because they think it's going to result in violence against these groups.
So the left has said and noticed that negative stereotypes can be harmful. Okay. And so there's some kind of like contradiction that he is trying to set out, right? That we don't want people to make assumptions based on someone's like inherent characteristics that they're going to behave or that they are in conformity with some preconceived profile. My guess is what Adam is going to say here is, well, if you can't make assumptions on people's race, why can you make assumptions based on people, what they say and what they do and the actions they take of our politicians, right? So if you're against racial stereotyping, you have to be against accurately describing an individual, not their profile, but just that individual's conduct. What? So because we're against racial profiles and stereotyping based on untrue assumptions, we should not therefore criticize individuals for their accurate assessments of what they do and what they say. Make that make sense. I mean, I think he's going there. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm sure he'll let us know.
Negative people, negative stereotypes of gay people. So they've gone out of their way to minimize these negative stereotypes because they think it's going to result in violence against these groups. That's the argument. Like, even when people were talking about using the term groomer, a lot of people came out and said, look, if you're calling someone a groomer, you're making them a target of violence because you're implying that they're a pedophile. So,
okay, so I hear a couple like disparate ideas there. One is that using stereotypes might lead to certain negative outcomes, or using words incorrectly might yield like incorrect outcomes or something like that. And so we shouldn't use words incorrectly. Well, like, yeah, we shouldn't use words incorrectly. We're just like, we're using words correctly. That's number one. Number two is we're making allegations based on individuals. We're not trying to say that you fit this racial, ethnic, whatever profile, and therefore you're conforming with this profile. We're saying your actions as an individual or as a leader or as a political force, Donald Trump, Steve Miller, J.D. Vance, all these people, like, what you're doing is fascist. And under Adam's logic, like, oh, well, if you're against racial stereotypes and, unjustified labeling, you can't use the term fascist. Or you can't ever be negative towards anyone because he's basically saying that you become a hypocrite somehow. I don't understand. Maybe you're just wrong about the label, right? Like maybe you're calling someone a fascist when they're not a fascist. That doesn't make you a hypocrite about stereotypes. It just means that you're wrong about the label fascist. But the only thing that they have, I guess, or the only thing they're used to, is having these conversations about CRT and racism and on college like liberals or whatever, or lefties. And so every conversation needs to be brought back to CRT, you know, cultural Marxism, Jordan Peterson memes. Every conversation. So now it's a conversation about hypocrisy, even though you can just be like, well, I disagree that he's a fascist. It doesn't have anything to do with the racial stereotyping logic or whatever, racial profiling.
The left understands this, that these stereotypes can result in dangerous outcomes for certain people. So I don't see, it seems hypocritical to then say, oh yeah, I'm going to call everyone on the right a fascist.
But we don't call everyone on the right a fascist. We call people on the right a fascist.
Nazi, racist, or, 20 years, 10 years, however long it's been, and it's not going to result in that same situation. They seem aware of it in one situation and completely in denial in another situation. And it's kind of the hypocrisy that bothers me. I don't know that you could necessarily say it's anyone in particular's fault in the same way, some racist stereotype is anyone in particular's fault. Yeah, exactly. They heard they heard us talking.
Yeah, so let me try to address it from my point of view of what you just said. So one, I don't think whether or not Donald Trump himself, like not the whole Republican Party, but Donald Trump himself is a fascist, I think is separate from whether or not you use that word. So when people were upset about people calling other people groomers, it wasn't the concept of the word groomer. I think most, if not everyone, could agree you shouldn't not use the word groomer for someone who is taking
a groomer, right? Like it seems like a basic point. Like, yeah, the problem with like the over application of the word groomer where it doesn't fit is self-evident. You shouldn't apply the term groomer where it doesn't fit. Just like you shouldn't apply like any word where it doesn't fit, especially if it's a word of like major significance if it doesn't fit. But you're trying, what Adam and Sid try to do is they try to make an end run around the actual debate to make it a hypocrisy debate. Like what you have to debate is the actual thing. Is it accurate or not? And then you could say it's like, whatever, you're being unreasonable or you're being inflammatory or you're trying to bring about violence. I don't even think that's true. You could just be wrong about what fascism is, and then you can just own them on the marketplace of ideas about like the term fascism, whether it applies. But he tries to make an end run and make this kind of weird, oblique argument about hypocrisy, and to somehow say the left is inconsistent because look, they use racial stereotypes and they also call fascists, or they criticize racial stereotypes as though there's anything inconsistent with that. There's not anything inconsistent. They could just be wrong about one.
Person, probably prepubescent or a minor, under your wing, and then making them want to do sexual stuff or waiting until they're 18, but like planting the seeds in the brain. That is grooming. I don't think anyone has a problem with using that word. What was happening in the context of everyone being upset about it was you had the right wing painting the LGBT community as groomers. You said all trans people are groomers, and not you, by the way, just like that is what you were hearing. And so that word became this dirty, like, let us demonize the entire group as the worst possible thing, a pedophile, and essentially calling all of them a pedophile. And then you saw stuff like Club Q getting shut up, the Pulse nightclub stuff, like this. Obviously that
look,
stuff.
We're 100% agreement.
Do you not get tired of surrounding yourself with clapping seals? It's this great thing. Like I do these debates. I go to West Virginia on the train. Well, I take a train to DC and then I go in a car for an hour and a half to West Virginia to debate these people. I've done the same thing with modern day debate. I have another one scheduled up that's going to come up with the right winger. I have a specific time where I call in and beg right wingers to come debate. I'm not the one dodging. It's Rob Norris. I'm not doing debates with lefties anymore unless you agree with me. Fuck you. I don't have to do any debate. If you don't agree with me on Biden corruption, I'm not going to say shit to you. I'll talk to that other guy who agrees with me. I'll talk to a lefty if he just is totally prostrate. I'm not going to talk to you. I don't owe you jack shit. Fuck him. That's what Rob Noor does. Andrew Wilson says, oh, you have to pay me thousands of dollars. That's what they do. I'm like begging right wingers. I love the content. I would love it if some Trumpers called in. We've been having a little bit of a lack of Trumpers calling in. But yeah, if you are a Trumper, please just join. There's an open policy for Trumpers. Wait, is Blossoms the same Blossoms person with a new account? Yeah, I don't know. Bloppums and Blossoms.
Here.
Okay, sure. And then you're saying, if I'm not mistaken, if you say that every Republican is a fascist, you are doing similar things as, hey, you're saying every single person who votes for Trump and is participating in this is part of this group of people that want to do the worst things ever, like akin to pedophilia, right? So you are perpetuating that sort of narrative. You're encouraging people to take action. That's kind of what you're saying. Like it's a
I mean,
hypocritical.
in the same way, look, you just made the argument that the groomer stereotype caused violence.
So don't say, like, don't call groomers who are actually groomers. Make that make sense. Like, yeah, if it's an incorrect stereotype that's over labeling a group of people with a term that isn't applicable, that's a problem. But properly calling a groomer isn't a problem, right, Adam? Properly calling a fascist isn't a problem. It's this weird hypocrisy argument to avoid, just like, get in the weeds on Trump and whether you think people are wrong or correct about it.
You said they shot up
the stereotype, right?
Right.
So
yeah. So look, I'm not in favor of the groomer stereotype either, and I spoke out against it. So
right, and so
I'm consistent. I don't say anything bad about anyone. I don't ever criticize anything. I didn't say no, dude. Just be like, all right, you're consistent in that you were consistently calling all these people groomers when they weren't groomers. So be consistent in correctly calling out fascists when they are being fascists. And if they're not being correctly called fascists, you can call that out, but not on the basis of your consistency. Other than, I guess, your inherent desire to not have negative labels applied to people who don't deserve them, which I guess I share, but he's approaching it in a weird way. I'm repeating myself.
My issue was when you were saying this on the show, it seemed like you at least think that Donald Trump might not be a fascist. You seemed like at the very
there it is.
Like,
that'd be a good assumption. Yeah.
Well, we can get into that, but I guess the difference that I see here is, on one hand, you have, like, groomers exist everywhere. There's gay groomers, there's trans groomers, there's straight groomers. Pedophilia is oldest time, right? When you paint the whole group as groomers, that's going to be inflammatory. If you say the Democratic Party is the party of pedophiles, as MTG said, yeah, this is going to cause some backlash.
I'm against all of that.
And you agree,
that's
right?
Terrible.
But when you call Donald Trump a fascist, and you say, and everyone, not every single person supporting him, but like the party that coalesces around his fascist, actions, I don't see that as the same. Because
because
I think
he really is a fascist, right?
Well,
that would be a distinguisher, though, right? Adam laughs, but like that would be a distinguisher. Like if you call the Republicans who coalesce around Trump and the elites, the MAGA elites, if you say that they don't care about democracy or free speech, would that be like, okay, that's so wrong to say, or authoritarian? Would you have a problem if it were authoritarian? That's what the kind of consistency line I would try to push. Is would you be happy calling Trump an authoritarian? Like, no, that's an assumption. I'm not going to make an assumption because I wouldn't call all Democrats groomers. So because I wouldn't call all Democrats groomers, I'm not going to call Trump a authoritarian. Like, what? What, bro? Also, folks, great time to follow me on TikTok. The Chinese, man, the Singaporeans, they're trying to. I had a really great TikTok that like got off the ground, 15,000 views, and my next one is like 9. How does that make any sense? They're trying to screw me. And I know it's not me because on other things I had an even better TikTok that's only doing 9. Like, what does that even make sense? That doesn't make any sense. You should follow me on TikTok. It's at Pisco.
Yes, I think the actions are fascism. We'll get into that. But two,
like, look, he's losing his mind. He's like, what is so funny? What they're obviously he treats them differently because he believes they're different. So you're gonna have to argue that. You can't get around it.
Fascism is like this switch that you flip, right? Like when you, and we'll get into this. I guess we can get into this now. Like, what do you think when you think fascist? Because I think a lot of people think
a lot of
Nazis,
groomers don't act
right?
on their.
How is that responsive at all? You're basically saying, well, for certain people, they might hide their groomerness, like a fascist might hide their fascism. But what Soypill, I think, is getting at is that they are implementing fascism. They have fascistic tendencies. And the group that you're talking about is way too broad and applying to people who don't have such groomer tendencies.
Groomer behavior. So I mean, maybe it's a switch as well.
Before
let me step back. Go ahead.
I was going to say, before we debate fascism or what it means, I mean, I would say, I don't know if you agree, that most people, I think overwhelming majority of people, if you call someone a fascist, No one really knows what that means.
Yes.
They just hear Nazi. That's
Mhm.
how they perceive it. They
Yeah, that's
perceive
what I
it
was
as
getting at. Yes,
Nazi
100%,
Germany
yeah.
and Hitler.
Yeah, racist, anti-Semite.
But like
Someone who
not
wants
just
to put you in a
racist, but racist in
concentration
an
camp.
authoritarian government that's going to put people in the concentration camps or something
Yeah,
crazy.
exactly. It's going to kill millions of people indiscriminately.
So don't call anyone a fascist. I mean, is that the prescription? Is because people have this view in their mind of the Nazis when you call someone a fascist that we should like not. Remember when we were having these debates about communism and socialism, and these guys were wanted to apply the academic definition of socialism and communism, and so now we don't care about the definitions of words, and we're just thinking about the public connotations of those words, and that's determining whether or not the word is applicable or not.
That's
yeah,
what
I saw
people
the same
think.
same sort of language stuff when the Israel-Palestine stuff not started kicking off, but the post-October 7th like
Of
wars
course,
and stuff. People were
yes.
hesitant to use the word genocide because they're like, well, they're not trying to exterminate them all. They're just, at war and there's like a bunch of collateral damage.
Right.
And the word genocide is attached to the 1940s. It's attached to the, Armenians. Like they were hesitant to use that. I think it's a little more clear now, but regardless, I see what you're saying. Yes, that was kind of my point. Is like I had to read a whole book on fascism to be like, how would you even define this? And post reading that book, post reading the Umberto Eco essays too, I'm like,
It's still
could I really
confusing.
define this, right? And it seems like this is kind of the meme in the scholar community of like, you can't really peg it down. You can't be like, here it is, the one thing that fascism is.
The thing is, like every category is like that. I say this all the time, and it's what was I told? What did Joanna say? Like an apple, the category of an apple, the category of a Democrat, the category of a liberal. It's a cluster concept that has easy cases and hard cases. And so you're never going to be able to put as fine a line on it as, well, if you support bop bop, you're a fascist. It's what's closer to the paradigmatic fascist and what's farther away from the paradigmatic fascist, and what are easy cases and hard cases. Well, is calling yourself a fascist a necessary condition to being a fascist? I think most people would say no, that self-ID on fascism isn't a necessary condition of fascism. By the way, it's not the way that the right and MAGA and Trump have used the word. Remember, Trump called, I want to stress this again for all of our MAGA folks in the chat, Trump called Democrats, Kamala, Biden, fascists directly. Not like some kind of virtue signals type dog whistle. He called them directly fascists multiple times. And so we have to make an assessment based on this cluster concept and the paradigmatic examples of fascism. And I think if you start to see what the party actually stands for, it's not even close. Not even close, in my opinion.
What you can do is look at the things that we would agree are fascist, or just throw that term out and say, what do the ideologies that people talk about?
Not even close, as in they are fascist.
When they mean this, what governments have in common. And those things I see in Trump's government, and we can kind of get into those core things. But I guess if your contention is the word fascist is so poison to people and they think it only means Nazi, which I agree, like a bunch of people do think that, I could see it inciting some sort of like rage or like pushback.
I'd be careful with the term incitement just in general. That I understand he's using it colloquially to mean causing, right? People are using the term incitement to mean causing. It might cause people to do whatever. But don't ever, I would say, lose sight of the fact that just because something causes it doesn't mean that it incited it in the legal sense. Because when you say incite, some people will say, therefore you said incitement. Incitement's not protected speech. Got to be careful with that, all right, folks? There's incitement, the legal term of art, and incitement meaning caused or brought about, or was the sort of proximate factor bringing something about. And so I'm not saying you should never use incitement as a term to mean the colloquial version. You should only use legal. I'm not saying that. That would be too strong. I would just say, keep that in mind. And if someone tries to call you, you said inciting, so that should be punished. I mean, sorry, it's not protected, right? Because we have all this thing on incitement. You said, no, when I said incitement there, I wasn't using the legal term of art of incitement. That's why I would probably shy away from that term, is because people might try to call me on that,
but I don't think it's inaccurate to describe the government that way at all.
Well, like a good YouTuber, I've never read a book on fascism, but I have watched a lot of other YouTubers who have claimed to have read books on fascism in those videos.
That's kind of funny. Hey, that's kind of funny. Point to Sitch. I mean, Adam now is like this humorless old fart in the corner. He just kind of like nags in the corner. Sitch at least is putting some effort into like making a little funny joke. Adam just was like he just nags in the corner. Folds his arms like, I don't like doing you, and you shouldn't call me a centrist because I really should. You know,
has a good video on it. I think I watched Dad's video on it and some others. And it seemed like, yeah, I know you're saying that there are like there's some key components of, you know, how people, you know, define fascism, even though it is somewhat vague or amorphous or some kind of hard to pin down exactly what fascism means. So I don't know if it's really useful for our conversation to get into a long debate about it, because as we both seem to acknowledge, like no one.
It's not useful to talk about what fascism is. I'm going to say that's pretty consequential, bros. I'm going to say it's pretty consequential to talk about the thing you're saying shouldn't be used. Like, we shouldn't use the words to define things they mean. I'm going to say that's pretty important. It would be like saying, let's not have a communism socialist conversation. We'll try to have that conversation without knowing or understanding what those terms mean. It reminds me of those conversations where it's like similar thing, where no one is even agreeing what socialism or communism is. And they're dissatisfied with the notion that the word can mean different things to different people or have a broader meaning than its academic technical meaning, which is, you know, kind of what I was getting at in that entire discussion, motherfuckers. Motherfuckers never loved us.
Yeah, most people, when they say fascist, they don't know what the fuck that means anyway. They just mean Nazi. So, but that's why I think where the argument comes from is that if most people just mean Nazi when they say fascist, they're calling Trump a Nazi, and they're not just saying like, oh, I hyperbolically think he's racist. They're saying,
oh, is that the new term, Sitch? Is that the new theory of language and meaning? That if people, when they say socialism, mean AOC and Zoran and Bernie, that's what socialism means? Is that the kind of grace you were giving to the left wing and Econoboy back when you were having those discussions? Is, oh, just go with the overriding public connotation instead of what the overriding public meaning is go with that public connotation. Were you giving that kind of grace in terms of narrowness or openness vis-a-vis Econoboy when you brought him on to fucking ring him through the coals? Is that what you were doing?
oh, I think he's, you know, Hitler 2.0. If people believe that, then obviously that would be a justification for violence against Trump and those that support Trump.
I think the difference is, as someone who does say this is the reason I don't think Trump is a Nazi, by the way, is not because his actions aren't kind of on the stepping stones to what the Nazi party did. It's more of this guy's like too much of like a gay diva to like hate LGBT people and be.
Guys, the Nazis were pretty gay coded. I don't know what to say. The Nazis were incredibly flamboyant. I don't know where we get this. Like, yeah, they killed gay people for sure, 100%. Not denying it. They killed Ernst Röhm, who was this gay leader of the SA during the Night of the Long Knives. Understand all that, but I don't like that. I more like the explanation that anti-Semitism isn't at the core of Trumpism. And in fairness, it wasn't really at the core of Italian fascism either. They only started going after Jews really in adopting this kind of Aryan style framework after the Nazis. But I don't view it as central to the Italian fascist or to the definition of fascism in the way that I view anti-Semitism as central to the dogma of Nazism. I mean, anti-Semitism was a core in a way that I don't really think it is to fascism generally. And to be honest, I don't think that anti-Semitism is core to the Trump ideology either. There are specific instances of anti-Semitism that Trump, I think, has for sure. When he calls, for example, Schumer's a Palestinian, like that to me is like anti-Semitic, in my opinion. He's not a real Jew or something. I think he said he's not really Jewish anymore. He's pro-Palestinian, or he's a Palestinian, using Palestinian as a term of a negative, right? A negative term, as an insult. So I don't think it's fair to call Trump. I think Trump admires Nazis. He admires Hitler based on reporting about from the generals, and he had like Mein Kampf nearby and was like favorably referring to it. I think that there's aspects of Nazis that he admires, but I don't think it's fair to call him a Nazi in that sense, unless you're kind of just saying it as an off the cuff whatever thing, and you're not really holding to it. Like sometimes I'll say, Aaron's a Stalinist, Trump's a Nazi, that kind of stuff. But if I'm being serious, I don't actually think Trump is a Nazi. I think Trump is a fascist. And some of the core things there is the racial mythology that I think is central to Nazism isn't the same racial mythology in the Trump context. It's a different kind of thing. And the anti-Semitism isn't, look at the way that Trump supports the Jewish state. He is willing to have prominent Jewish members within his cabinet positions, all that stuff. I don't view that anti-Semitic dogma as central to MAGAism or Trumpism in the same way that I think is necessary or a necessary component of what made Nazism in the German context. And so I just want to be clear where I stand on that. Hitler had a Jewish doctor. I understand he had some people around him that were Jewish, whatever. I'm just saying I don't really view even ideologically the kind of rhetoric that Trump is employing as being in principle anti-Semitic ideologically. And so it's all pieces of evidence, right? It's the fact that he has prominent members who are Jewish, part of his family, and making major decisions. That's one, right? Two, he supports the Jewish state in Israel and expanding the Jewish state in Israel. That's evidence number two. Number three, that core anti-Semitic Aryan mythology isn't present in his speeches, in his rhetoric. It's like a alternate form of racial mythology or hierarchy having to do more with outsiders, insiders in the sense of Latinos, stuff like that, drug dealers, poison in the blood, not strictly speaking anti-Semitic in that sense. So I'm not saying it's a necessary component. I'm just saying these are all bits of evidence that I think indicate that anti-Semitism isn't at the core of the MAGA dogma. I don't really think it is. Now, does that mean that there are not anti-Semitics who are MAGA people? Not saying that. And there are variants of MAGA ideology that definitely are anti-Semitic. Groyper adjacent type thing. Well, even though now a lot of the Groypers have abandoned Trump specifically because of his, in their mind, lack of anti-Semitism, lack of punishing of Israel, etc. So I just want to be clear that it's not just because he has Jewish people around him, he has Jewish friends, it's other stuff too. You get me? You understand?
Like as racist as like Hitler was, like he wasn't writing books about like exterminating the Jews 20 years before this. He was like, going to drag show, dressing up in drag with like Rudy Giuliani. Like I think he himself is not like has a personal deep bigotry. I think his actions kind of speak to that in a different way though. But yeah, the difference here is I do think that Trump is a fascist, or at least on his stepping stones to being a bigger fascist than he already is. Maybe you can call it like pseudo-fascism, or like, we're in 1920s Germany instead of 1940s Germany. But I don't think it justifies violence against him or anyone right now, because I think there are still paths to victory. I mean, I could say that his actions in 2016 were fascist. I think he's ramped it up in 2024, but I still thought, okay, well, we can still beat him in 2020, and we did. So the only time I think it justifies violence is if it's an existential, immovable threat that it's like, okay, we are not, like, he's shut down the voting booths, no more elections, like we can't do this in any other way but with some sort of like civil war crazy thing, and we're not even close. Well, we're not there yet. So
I don't think we're close to it either. I agree with it. Just because you think that people in power are fascists doesn't mean that you think that the best solution is to implement violence. I don't think that follows. There could be other ways to undermine fascists in power other than violence, and it's been done before. Vis-a-vis, for example, Franco. Franco, there was the transition into a republic after the nationalistic victory in the Spanish Civil War.
That's why I don't think
there was a civil war initially, but in terms of resolving the aftermath of it, that happened not through violent overthrow. And so I don't think that it's necessary that just because there's fascists in power that you necessarily are calling for violence. I think that that's a stupid meme that right-wing people are trying to propagate.
Necessarily is akin to advocating for violence.
When you say that, like, you think Trump is a pseudo-fascist, what would be the end goal? Like, what does that look like? Is Trump going to be president forever? Is he going to put brown people in camps? Paint that picture for me.
In order to paint that picture, Sitch, you idiot, you have to have some concept of what fascism is, right? he starts saying, I don't really want to get into what fascism is, but explain how this person is behaving in a fascist way. That's like an incoherent thing. Like, how would I be able to explain how a certain action is fascistic without having a concept for what fascism is? Like, you would have to have some semantic understanding of what fascism, like, do you get that? How can I even begin to approach showing you the fascistic moves or tendencies of Trump or his elite allies without having in your mind a concept of fascism? Which before, Sitch is like, I don't really want to get into fascism. It's such an amorphous concept. Explain to me how this, like, what? This is why people accuse me of pedantry on that, but like, it truly isn't, like, how could I possibly convey that to you now, maybe if we're just doing virtue signals, if we're just doing like public rhetoric to try to get people to click and get people animated and convince people do whatever, then you can just have this kind of amorphous conversation about nothing, or we're just kind of like saying words to each other and making like noises and grunts and shit. But that's essentially not a conversation at that point, right? There's not like a rational way to convey, I think, without having some level of a concept of what fascism is, which is a kind of thing that Sitch doesn't want to approach, at least at the start of this conversation, with any precision whatsoever. Even at some loose level of precision, it's kind of whatever. I don't know what. Then how are you going to possibly get Soypil to just, like, you're going to put some impossible standard. You're going to intuit some impossible standard for fascism after stating that you don't really want to get into the concept of it. And that's going to make this exercise an exercise in futility, because we're not going to have 100% parity between Hitler and Trump. Okay, so you win. I mean, that's kind of their game here, is they want to avoid the hard, tough conceptual challenge.
Sure. So this is kind of what I wanted to get to with like the tenets of like how fascism works. We can get into the end goal too, but like fascism, as I understand it from these books and like from looking at the different ideologies,
and Soypil immediately, right? So Soypil immediately, I think this is smart, immediately goes to conceptual. Adam already fucking, look at this fucking loser. Huh. I don't like what I'm hearing. Look at how tight his arms are to his chest. This fucking Karen.
Like ultranationalism, othering some sort of minority group and blaming them for everything. Having some sort of like authoritarian leader that like everyone looks up to, who will like never admit fault, almost like godlike, if you will. That's like, hey, this guy is like the answer to all of our problems. This is combined with also this idealization of like this mythical past of, if we can just get back to where everything was good, where we didn't.
See, this is good from Adam, physically. I want you to be open, Adam, but he looks a little stressed. So here's some clear, the cluster concept that Soypil is describing here is, I think, so far emphatically clear.
Blaming them for everything. Having some sort of like ultranationalism from these books and like from looking at the different ideologies is this totality of like
So totality, meaning it's a cluster concept, ultranationalism,
othering some sort of minority,
othering a minority group
and blaming them for everything,
having
some sort of like authoritarian leader that
having authoritarianism,
like everyone looks up to, who
that everyone looks up to.
Fault,
that's like the,
if you will,
the leadership principle that whatever the leader says, right? And that was very much embedded in El Duce and in Hitler.
Like, hey, this guy is like the answer to all of our problems. This is combined with also this idealization of like this mythical past of, if we can just get
mythology, very central, right? The Roman past, the Aryan past, the Third Reich mythology, core concept. I think that this is beautiful so far, what Soypil is saying.
Back to where everything was good, when we didn't have this group,
100%.
Like the liberals weren't doing this. All of these in totality kind of like make up the fascist ideology.
I think that is a beautiful understand of some of the core fascistic concepts, this cluster concept. That I think is beautiful, and he's hit on, to me, some of the most salient factors.
Now, you look at that part of the thought, and then you combine that with the, okay, well, what did the Nazis do? Because that's what everyone always goes to, right? So it's like, what's Trump going to do?
Right. So you can be a fascist before you've implemented the worst kinds of fascistic violence. But this is right. Like, the Nazi fascists were fascists before they were in power. That clearly is possible. And the Nazis' descent into expansionism, war, genocide, further and further authoritarianism was gradual. So at any point, and people were doing this back, and we're fighting the same battles. People were doing this back in the day for the Nazis, saying, oh, it won't be so bad, you know. Okay, so we've, you know, have this rhetoric. Okay, well, now the Jews are being incentivized to migrate out. Okay, well, now that's self-deportation, right? Even that's parallel to what the Nazis did in terms of right now. Self-deport, we'll pay you money. We'll pay you money to go resettle elsewhere. Okay, fucking around with citizenship, rescinding citizenship. Huh. So at any point in that conversation, would you ever like say, oh, well, they're not fascist because they have, but the concept of fascism is ideological in nature, and the maneuvers that a fascistic regime will take aren't necessarily one-to-one, right? Would you say, well, Franco was not a fascist because he ended up not doing a Holocaust? Or Mussolini was not a fascist because whatever, right? Make the disanalogy with Hitler, even though he was the first fascist, right? So you have to be able to see at different stages of the regime, different kinds of actions and the particularities of the cultural and legal context in which fascism emerges are relevant to the predictive outcomes. But when we call something fascistic, it has to do with the ideological grounding and the kinds of moves that they're doing, not whether or not they're the same in all respects. That's why the concept isn't just a one-to-one equality with everything that happened in fascist Italy or in fascist Germany.
I think Trump is going to die at some point, right, from old age or whatever. He can't be president forever, but he's seriously floated the idea of, I want to run for a third term. He's tried to overthrow the election in 2020. So when I look at these things, and it's like, this is a person who doesn't believe in the core tenets of democracy that make our country work. He's willing to do bad things to stay in power, illegal things to stay in power. This to me screams not Nazism or fascism, not Nazism. Even I did it right there. Do you kind of see what I'm getting at?
Yeah, I totally, that was very clear from Soy Pill. I think that was wonderful. Yeah, so I have no problem with what he said there.
So but that's why I'm asking, because like, is it just, do you think that Trump is going to try to be president until he dies?
That's your distillation of what Soy Pill said? So you think Trump's going to be president for what? So he is trying to narrow this conversation to avoid a difficult conversation about the concepts that Soy Pill has brought up. Just be like, okay, are you just claiming as though Soy Pill is going to make a prediction that, you know, there could be a myriad of reasons why Trump might step down, not being inconsistent with him being a fascist. One is that he's like 80, or because he wants a pardon, or because he's not able to effectuate the kind of dictatorship because we're going to stop him or something, right? So like the question of will he always end up being president for life doesn't resolve whether he's a fascist or not. I think it's an absurd response.
Yeah,
Like,
I think
that's
that's a
why I'm-
very, I think, I don't know like what probability I put it on, but like it would not be crazy to me. Like if you asked me this in 2016, I would say, no, of course not. He's, you know, he's a buffoon. He's an entertainer, but you know, he's got right-wing politics and he's going to try to be a right-wing president.
J-Mac giving $100 to Cincinnati. Look at these Oilers. $100 to Cincinnati. Why doesn't my J-Mac donate like this? So everyone has a conservative J-Mac, but theirs donates $100.
Then he's going to disappear and they'll replace him. Post 2020, I'm like, okay,
The donor
he
class.
lost an election, refused to concede, and then tried to
Look, this
get
is
these, like false electors in.
This is their J-Mac. Their J-Mac gives $100, and this is my J-Mac. We have J-Mac at home, and my J-Mac just like fucking ats me with conservative shit. Their J-Mac gives them $100.
I like the Electoral Count Act, and now he's joking or not joking. I think, given that, I don't think he's joking when he says maybe I'll run for a third term, maybe I'll find a way to do this with the 22nd Amendment. I think there's a very good chance he does try to stay in power. I don't think that's absurd at all to believe.
Okay. And
so.
is that the only? So
Is that the only? No, he just went on for 3 or 4 sentences about what he considers fascism to be. Is that the only? No. Did you not listen?
well, I guess I'm trying to get at is like, so the element is, okay, Trump might try to be president a third term, and then also, you know, he's blaming immigrants, he's blaming an out group. for America's woes and things of that nature, trying to be nationalistic. Like, to me, I think if you're going to label someone a fascist, there needs to be something a lot more there in terms of fascism-ish things that people think of a fascist.
That doesn't. Do you understand how fucking annoying it is when people say, "Oh, Sitch is smart"? Sitch is a fucking idiot. To me, there needs to be something more in terms of fascism. Thank you so much, Doobie, for your $1. For your $1, that is a fifth of the value of this. And so, in a way, you're funding the stream with your dollar. But thank you so much, in a direct way. Like, this guy's a fucking moron. He's like, to me, to be fascism, you have to have more fascism. You haven't even given your concept of fascism. So how can something be more fascistic if you in your mind haven't given, and for the audience certainly, a more clear concept of fascism? Right? It's kind of like when Andrew Wilson, another fucking idiot, he was going after Destiny because he's like, well, I think this term insurrection is, the definition of insurrection that you gave, Destiny, better fits riot. Well, how is that even, how could you even say so? And he was trying to say, I don't have a burden of proof. I don't have a burden of proof. But at some point during the conversation, thank you so much for the $1. This really helps. Thank you so much. Andrew Wilson kept saying, I don't have a burden of proof. I don't have a burden of proof. I don't have a burden of proof. I don't have any, I took a agnostic position, so I don't need to provide you with a definition of insurrection or riot. Do you remember this meme? But once Andrew Wilson said, well, the definition that you've provided for insurrection better fits riot. In order to know whether a definition better fits one word versus another, you're going to have some concept in your head about what these words mean or ought to mean, right? You can't make that statement and say, relatively, this definition better fits riot unless you have in your mind a notion of riot and a notion of insurrection, either a normative notion or a descriptive notion about what people mean by the term. Like, you couldn't possibly come to some kind of, like, what does the word better mean in that context if you don't have an inherent notion of what riot and insurrection mean or ought to mean? Like, it doesn't even make any sense. So once he says, oh, your definition of insurrection is better fit for riot, at that point in the conversation, you need to have a notion for what these terms mean or ought to mean that come from somewhere, that come from how the words are used, that come from legal histories of the word, that come from public usage, public meaning, dictionaries, something, right? To ground out the statement that you made, which is the definition you provided, Destiny, of insurrection better fits this versus another. The statement is devoid of all meaning if there isn't some kind of relative weight that's being given to one word versus another based on something, not based on nothing. And so when you say something like, oh, for me, fascism needs more fascismo, or something like, what? You first need to give a concept for what is fascist to say your application or definition isn't close enough to my core of fascism without having some notion of it in the first place. You guys following me? Like that by itself as a critique, and people will always do this, right? Like with insurrection, they'll be like, oh, that's not sufficiently insurrection because why? Because you need to have some grounding. You need to have some basis to say that it's not an insurrection, right? Grounded in some definition or some usage or some normative notion for what insurrection ought to mean. That isn't circular and just self-referential. Do you get me? You guys understanding this? To make these kinds of statements, there needs to be first a concept before you can accuse the application of not being sufficiently close to some concept, because it's a referential type statement that is being made here, and in the Andrew Wilson example that I just provided.
Thing trying to be national, immigrants, blaming our group for America's woes and things of that nature, trying to be nationalistic. Like, to me, I think if you're going to label someone a fascist, there needs to be something a lot more there in terms of fascism-ish things that people think of fascist Italy or fascist Germany, in terms to sort of throw that accusation at Trump.
So there needs to be more. For something to be fascist, it needs to be more like what they did in Italy in Nazism. But he's giving some, thank you so much for the membership. Guys, this is great. Kevin, thank you so much. The membership stuff really helps. Really, really helps. I appreciate it. In what respect, right? Need it be more? Need it be more in what respect, actually? Like, you need to say, all right, so until there's a genocide, you're unwilling, but then you're just going to be hit with hypotheticals of like, okay, so would you call the Nazis fascists before they took power? Holy shit! $300. Doobie, what is there to say? When it rains, it pours. Minus 300. Minus 300. Thank you so much. That's great. That's insane. That's amazing. Thank you, Doobie. The Doobs. Doobs gets a lot of bad press, but you know, including by me in a time. But when you donate to the stream, it's pure pizzazz. It's pure amazingness. It's wonderful. So this act by itself, it washes away. I'm just kidding. Thank you so much, Steve. I really do appreciate it. I really do appreciate it. This is dark money. Stop influencing my stream or Pisco control by dark money. Also, if you're a member, you can use the pendejo emote. That's Pisco pendejo in the chat. Emotes. My streamer. Not my streamer. These guys are look at my MAGA reply, guys. How many gay prostitutes can Pissman get for $300 with AIDS? What's wrong with you guys? This guy's like a consistent chatter too. It's, like, this is not just some random. This is a guy who's always in my. How many? Jesus, what's wrong with you? It's insane. Thank you so much, dude. I really do appreciate it. Please say pendejo like you're a white guy. This is America. Pendejo. The email looks like one of my uncles. Gross. Yeah, it's kind of gross. Anyway, if you say, well, in order for something to be fascism, they have to do more things like they did in Nazism or in the Nazi Germany or in Italy, you're just going to be hit with a hypothetical, which is not even a hypothetical. Like, historically, do you think the Nazis were considered fascist before they took power? Okay, so then it's not necessary that they do these things that you would, if you're willing to call them fascist before they take power, then it is not necessary they do these actions, right? That's the problem with what Sitch is presenting here, is if there's some sort of necessary condition of requisite action, then it would be unfair to label this ideology fascist at any stage pre those actions or some kind of sufficient threshold of actions, even though we were quite willing historically now, contemporaneously as well, to call them fascists before they took hold, not just because we knew down the line they were going to do all this evil shit, you know? So it just doesn't reflect how we talk, that it be a necessary condition that you reach that threshold of action. It's not how we talk. It's an ideological thing, right? For example, suppose that Trump literally said he was a fascist, right? Suppose everything we know about Trump, and then he also self-IDs as fascist. Would Sitch deploy this and be like, well, even though he calls him, this is hypothetical, I know he doesn't actually call himself fascist. Even though he doesn't call himself, he does call himself fascist, and even though he does all this other stuff that you're talking about, and that's actually part of their ideology, he hasn't reached that threshold of action that we've seen in Italy or in Germany from the 20th century. Of course not. The minute he would call himself a fascist, by self-ID, Sitch and Adam would jump in and be like, okay, yeah, okay, I admit that they're now fascist. They wouldn't apply this kind of like, well, to me, they need to do some more fascismo actions. No, it's an ideology. And at any point in the governance of a fascist movement or a fascist government, there might be more or less, quote unquote, fascistic style actions or actions more closely paralleling Nazi Germany or fascist Italy. You understand what I'm saying? So this, I think, is not a convincing objection, because it would apply both to a self-ID'd fascist Trump and also a self-ID'd fascist Nazi Germany pre-taking of power and pre-arbitrary amount of fascistic action. You get me?
Sure. So I would throw in like crackdowns on free speech, a very gross disdain for the press,
So I would, if I were Soy Pill, I would hit him there. Like, okay, maybe this is a wrong intuition of mine, but because I'm this kind of structured, linear thinker, I'd be like, wait a second, are you suggesting? Because the problem here is Sitch. The problem here isn't Soy Pill. Sitch in his mind has not elaborated a clear concept or meaning that he attributes to fascism, or he hasn't explained with greater precision his thresholds for labeling a person or a movement fascistic. And that's a result, I think, of a lack of clarity on Sitch's part. And so I think in order to properly respond to Sitch's objection, you have to turn it around and say, wait a second, Sitch. We need to have a clear concept of what you mean by fascism. Are you suggesting that as a necessary condition before you're labeling someone a fascist, that you have to meet some threshold of action? And he would have to say yes or no, right? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Okay. So if that holds, you're saying even if Trump self-ID'd fascist, you wouldn't call him that? And then he'd have to make, okay, well, if they call themselves fascist, then I wouldn't take that. Like you'd have to have some kind of explanation for distinguishing all these different cases. So it's a conceptual problem, and the problem, I believe, is Sitch's, not Soy Pill's. Soy Pill, unfortunately, I think, rather than, though I think in like a good faith argument, it's fine. He wants to go directly to the analogs that reach his minimum threshold for, I guess, fascistic actions, but it's presupposing that you would need these kinds of actions separate and apart from the ideology. Whereas I think more properly understood, those actions are evidence of the ideology. I don't think that those actions are by themselves necessary to the labeling of fascist. Those actions are evidence of the state of mind and ideological grounding of the fascist entity. So the actions themselves are merely evidence for ideology. But you don't need those actions. They're not necessary components. And I think this is part of a conceptual lack of clarity. And it's largely, I think, Sitch's responsibility. Although I think Soy Pill should, rather than try to address the kind of gestalt of what he's pointing. So basically Sitch is like, show me the goods that make this. That's what Soy Pill is interpreting. But I think in reality, it's a problem of conceptual clarity on behalf of Sitch. But I don't think it's bad faith for Soy Pill to understand Sitch's objection as show me the goods. But it isn't, strictly speaking, I think, going to help. Because he's just going to say, well, that's not what Nazi it is. That's not what, they didn't just clamp down on speech. They also murdered Jews, right? And then that's just going to keep coming, is what I assume. I don't know if they get past it because this is my first time reacting to it.
Those are, I think, really, really big tenets of this. Would you agree with that tenet at least?
I still think, yeah, but the problem is that, like, the way that you're defining fascism.
Well, yeah, okay, actually, wait, let's step back. What do you need to see for you to call it fascism?
That's great. That's a great intuition by Soy Pill, and that's exactly what I would do. They need to have some conceptual clarity. This is great.
Well, I was gonna say the way that you're defining fascism, which I don't necessarily.
J-Mac, if you want to yap, you can come on stream, bro. I feel like I've talked to you before, J-Mac, but just don't be like super drunk.
Agree with. I think the problem with conceptualizing this is if you were to say, okay, those are the core tenets of fascism, I would say, well, in a less extreme version of all those things that you're saying, being more inclined to want to.
The thing is, Soy Pill needs to, I think, say, wait, stop, Sitch. Do you agree or don't you agree that is your concept of fascism? Before we start talking about labeling, like, is this a good definition, good core conceptualization of fascism? Let's just get answers, right? Because it really doesn't, if what we're trying to do is have an intellectual debate as opposed to just like speaking, like if we're not in agreement about what our words mean, like the conversation, in my opinion, just like it's not going to be fruitful in the intellectual sense. Again, it might just be like, you're making utterances and your audience is like reacting like animals or whatever to the utterances because they like the neural pathways that the utterances are giving them, or, maybe that's a little bit condescending, but you get what I'm talking about. Like the conversation needs to proceed in a way such that we like understand what they're even disagreeing about.
Go back to tradition, being more nationalistic, being inclined to blame out group for your problems. Mm-hmm. That's just like a standard conservative ideology. And then the extreme, like if you take that to violence or you take a more extreme version of it, it can become fascist.
So,
and then I would say that the same thing is true for communism or socialism. The whole idea of like, well, we need, there's too much unfairness in society. We need to fight.
And now you're introducing a brand new, like socialism and communism. Like this is not going to be helpful, I think, to our discussion, Sitch. I don't think it's going to be helpful at all. And basically we're saying it's like, well, there's some things about fascism that are shared with conservatism, but Soy Pill, I think, in his initial elaboration of the concepts, like I said, it's some ultra nationalism, not just nationalism, but nationalism to some nth degree. Plus, it's like complete fidelity to the leader, which is not a core conservative or necessary component of conservative or core conservative concept. They believe in hierarchy for sure. Conservatives believe in hierarchy, but what we're talking about is to the nth degree, where the hierarchy is ultimately dominated by a single figure of and not God, like a person, and that the dictates of the person, regardless of what they are. So in some respects, you could say there were some new, and perhaps you could even say non-conservative elements to Nazi ideology, in that the old aristocracy who wanted to see a return of the Hohenzollern, whatever the fucking name is, the dynasty of Wilhelm, they were not happy with some of those things, undermining the military, for example, the creation of the SS as a state within a state. So I do think that there are, shared aspects, right? Both conservatism and Nazism presumably believe in some amount of government, but that doesn't defeat the concept. And all you're just saying is like, okay, there could be some overlap in shared values, but that doesn't defeat the concept. You need to just bite the bullet. Like, this is an objection. Are you saying that this isn't a true concept, Sitch? Or saying that anything said was wrong? And there's not a lot of clarity here. It's like fighting ghosts. It's not really, they're not talking to each other, in my opinion. Holy shit. Doobie, you're all right, bro. I don't care what all these fuckers say. Doobie, you're okay. Anyone who says Doobie's not okay, you got to get through me. My price was $500. That's all it took. That's all my loyalty took. Just kidding. But thank you very much. Doobie, I really appreciate it. Doobie, J-Mac, they super chatted for you, bro. I don't know why you're not in VC. That was Doobie calling you out with 180 fun coupons. Doobie trying to buy Pisco, very sad. Doobie is not okay. Now J-Mac got to listen to Doobie and call in. Come on, J-Mac. We'll give J-Mac, because of that super chat, we're going to give J-Mac, this is all an op against J-Mac, and we're going to give him a full 3 minutes. Thank you so much for the subs. Wow. This is all dedicated to J-Mac. The reason why there's no more content is because J-Mac has been called out by Doobie. And so 3 minutes, we're just talking about J-Mac's being a bit of a bitch. I don't even know what he wants to talk about, to be honest. I guess apparently he's just like rustling the jimmies of everyone in chat. J-Mac, J-Mac, J-Mac. Thank you for the fun coupons, Doobie. It's a lot of money. I appreciate it. J-Wack. Hey, poor J-Mac. J-Mac needs to get together with J-Mac with C. You gotta quit yapping and get doobin'. $500, he's still banned in the Discord. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that. Doobie, you're a Latino? Hell yeah. We need the other J-Mac. Where's J-Mac? Oh, I think J-Mac might be banned from my Discord too. Not me, my mods. But you can at me, J-Mac. I think J-Mac is my friend on Discord. I think you can at me. Too bad, can't call in. What the fuck? Doobie funding Charlie's murderers? Isn't it weird? Yeah, I mean, we're just gonna give the full 3 minutes though. You're mostly Spanish? Wow. ¿Hablas español o no? Do we have any Latinos in the chat? Damas y caballeros. Any Latinos? How did Pisco not know Doobie was Hispanic? I forget. I don't keep track of all of your races. I'm not Latino, but I'm married to a Latina. Like the stream. You gotta like the stream. You're gonna like it, I guarantee it. Folks, shilling my TikTok. Boost me. I want to do these TikTok debates everyone's talking about. Everyone's talking about TikTok. It's Pisco Liddy, at Pisco Liddy. Also Instagram. We're putting shorts there every day. We're putting shorts there. So just go like it. You're going to feel good about yourself. You're going to feel really good. I am Latino. I like eating that cactus. Very cool. Vatos locos forever. Is it like racist if I do like a Latino accent? Is that? Órale. What up, boy? Doobie is not okay, but I'm okay with Doobie. All right. We're going to continue for a little bit longer. Thank you so much, Doobie, for the super chat. That was perhaps one of the song title is called El Barrio. El Barrio. Which means the neighborhood.
Hierarchies, we need to, help poor people, we need to make things more equal. Like, that's the standard left-wing position that the Democrats want. But then if you take it to an extreme, you get communism.
See, this is just not really an objection that it makes sense to me. So you either agree with what the concept is or you don't. Do you agree that his fascist definition, that meaning makes sense and is accurate under the standard notions of fascism? Or you don't? Raising concerns of like, oh, but this can be properly understood as sharing some goals at some arbitrary level of generality with conservatism. Therefore what? Therefore, what's the conclusion from that, Sitch? That he's wrong? Or that maybe there's certain distinctions that matter? But this can't defeat the notion of fascism altogether. Maybe you're saying there should be a precautionary principle or something before we label something fascistic based on how similar it is to ideologies that we don't have a problem with. But I'm really not so sure that they're that similar.
So that's why I'm kind of looking for
let me jump in there.
Have that extreme element to it.
I think you pointed out something really important, which is when you look at people that are like, let's say me, I have progressive politics. I'm like, I would like to tax people, share the wealth, and have people be lifted up. People say the extreme version of that is communism, taking as much wealth as possible,
Right.
making everyone on the same level, right? The difference being, one of these is my core fundamental.
That was the Doobie alert. Thanks again, Doobs.
Value is people can give more to the government, not everyone needs to be on the same level. The government needs to seize control of the means of production, which is what communism would be. But what you said for the right-wing thing, and I don't know if you did this on purpose, but this is kind of what we're getting at, is a lot of conservatives who have those tenets we talked about will absolutely, and a lot of them are right now, going along with fascist ideology. And it's not because it was conservative and fascism is the more extreme version. It's that the Tea Party movement has pushed the party, and Trump has pushed the party into a more fascist state where everyone is just kind of okay with that sort of ideology. And it's not extreme version is fascism and they're the conservative light version. It's, hey, you're already at the point where you believe it's okay to crack down on free speech. You're already at the point where you say, yeah, we should jail people for.
And that's a core aspect of fascism, is totalitarianism, authoritarianism, that kind of stuff, is this leader principle and the breakdown on checks against the dear leader. That's a core aspect of it that I'm not willing to say that all conservatives live by that principle. I mean, like, there are conservatives traditionally who very much believe in rule of law and very much believe in free speech. Conservative libertarians who are actual libertarians and not just like bootlicking shills in disguise who masquerade as libertarians, they are not committed to authoritarianism. And again, the mythology is another core part of it as well. In the MAGA case, it's both a ultra nationalistic mythology, but it is, I think, additionally, the pedo theory, critical pedo theory. I think that is a core mythology of the MAGA movement, is critical pedo theory. So these are all, I think, core concepts, as well as the scapegoating aspect, which has been brought up multiple times, and the ultra nationalism. And just saying, well, some conservatives are nationalistic, okay. Some conservatives scapegoat, okay. It's a cluster concept, and you haven't refuted it. You've just said that, like, or you haven't said you disagree with that, the meaning of the term. And like, the thing is, if that's what the term means, it's what it means. If you agree that that's what the term means, what are you actually fighting about? Yeah, some words can confuse. Some words can be used in ways that like manipulate or scare people. But if that's what the word means, like, that's what it means. Pisco, I love your Hitchens reference last night. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Hitchens. Don't agree with all of his political takes, but how he thought, I thought was always very interesting. And my First Amendment takes are not totally based on Hitchens at all, or like my belief in the First Amendment are not totally based on Hitchens. I always was a big First Amendment person. Probably George Carlin was more influential on me being like a free speech lover, because he was actually like censored and shit. And so the 7 words you can't say on TV, I know them, but I'm not going to say them because I don't want to get demonetized. But yeah, Hitchens, that speech about fire, right? Like, he goes over some aspects of the Schneck case, and then he talks a little bit shit about Oliver Wendell Holmes, who was, who offered an opinion in that case. I will add though that Oliver Wendell Holmes changed his mind on the incitement standard later on in a dissent. I think the case is called Abrams or something. And that was taken as probably some intellectual inspiration from learned hand, and ultimately became the case law of Brandenburg. I think that's right.
Flag burning. That might be the mainstream conservative position right now. That might be like, if everyone, 90% approval in the Republican Party for Trump agrees that it's okay to do that. I don't think they do, but a lot of them still are okay with him doing that, even if they don't agree with that specific thing. You're already in the fascist state, right? You don't have to worry about what's the end goal of Trump. It's, you're already cracking down on dissidents. You're already locking people up in these alligator Alcatrazes. You're already subverting due process. You're already consolidating power away from Congress. So it's kind of already happened. It's not like, well, eventually we'll get through the extreme fascism. It's like, oh, well, we're kind of there. Like, it could get worse, don't get me wrong. But that's why people use that word fascist for Trump. And that's why they're saying, wow, a lot of the Republican Party is really okay with this.
So under the kind of the metric, I guess, that you're using to label this fascist, wouldn't this also apply to, under how I was defining communism, wouldn't this also apply to the entire woke movement as trying to put, some kind of extreme communist in the government, in society?
How? The woke movement is responsible for communism? But yeah, some woke people would, right? Like, some woke people do want communism, for sure. But it depends what you mean by the term. That's what's so annoying, is I think that they play fast and loose with these terminologies. Like, the woke movement, according to Sitch, might include Democratic politicians who are very much not committed to communism, and oftentimes are committed, or like are criticized, I think rightly sometimes, for being too in bed with corporate interest. So the scope of what you're defining, yeah, some people in the woke movement bring about communism. Yes, that's what they want. Some people in the woke movement. Is woke inherently communistic? I don't think that that's true. But maybe you can give a concept of woke that would be. But I think part of woke is like pressuring private action, embracing kind of standards on corporations and working with corporations, not trying to overthrow them, having a private-public partnership to have political correctness be applied. It's kind of neutral, at least at its core, I think, on the system of government. You know, it has to do more with like what we label things, right? But even maybe there's a concept of wokeness that has an embedded feature of communism. I just haven't heard of it.
It depends on how you define woke. I mean,
yeah, I mean, that's a great response there. Yeah, it depends. And there are a lot of communists who don't give a fuck about woke. Like the tankies really are anti-woke for sure.
I know that there are mainstream
post-liberal,
communists, right?
anti-liberal, lefty types.
Post-liberal, anti-liberal, lefty types. Well, if you're anti-liberal, I mean, like, there are woke people who are liberals. There's nothing inconsistent with being woke and being liberal. Woke is a mindset. And woke is a way that you think that people with liberty should act. Like we should act to do this or that. Now there are some actions that you could say are anti-liberal proposals from the woke, I guess. But like, I think most people say liberals are woke. I just don't understand this group of people that Sitch is referring to. It just feels like he doesn't have a clear concept of even wokeism on his, at least on the table right now.
I don't know of any like mainstream communist thought that's like entered like a single politician. I think socialists like Dem Socks, like Bernie, Mamdani, like for sure. But I don't know.
Mamdani, yeah, sure, definitely.
I don't know.
Although Sitch just said communism here, so I would be careful before you say, ascribe the communist label or desire to people like Mamdani and Sanders. I don't think that's necessarily apt.
I don't know if these guys advocate for like communism. They're just like, hey, we should be more like the Nordic model and tax people higher. And
this is the econoboy debate all over. So now instead of talking about fascism, we're talking about woke shit.
Didn't Mamdani say he wanted to like get rid of capital ownership or bring the means of production back?
Well, if he did that, that is communist.
Specifically.
If he did say that, let me look that up. Yeah. Mamdani, but yeah, for sure. I mean, is that what he said? Did he say he wants to end private property?
He said something about bringing the means of production back to the people or something around that effect. I think it was only 2020.
Okay.
But,
well, let's just assume it's true. I don't know if it is, but like if he is saying that, absolutely, that is like an indication of what I'm talking about. And if the entire party was coalescing around President Mamdani and saying, yes, I'm okay with this guy ending capital as a private ownership, yeah, that would be the country is communist now, or at least most of this party is on board with communism. Like, absolutely.
Right.
We're not there yet.
But I would say,
I don't know if that's what people are voting for Mamdani for, but
the kind of way that I would conceptualize this with the left is I don't think most of the Democrat politicians, I don't perceive them as really being true believers into a lot of the far left ideology, but it seems like they were completely kowtowing to it. They're afraid of it when, we had the woke year.
What are we talking about here, huh? Why are we talking about leftists in this conversation about the term fascism? Explain to me how it relates. It's just so frustrating. Like, I think that the linearization stuff it's just how I like to have these conversations. And now when I'm so focused on it, sometimes I just get like frustrated when people are just yapping about random shit. But maybe I should be less triggered by it.
People are saying woke is dead now, but I'm not sure I believe that. But we obviously, went through sort of the woke years where that stuff, people were getting canceled left and right for any sort of, perception of doing something racist. You had, a lot of the BLM stuff going on, and it definitely seemed like the mainstream culture and a lot of the institutions were completely swept across the board with I would say far left, post-liberal or anti-liberal ideology. That all to me is rooted in critical theory and socialist ideology.
I guess I have to push back because
critical
it's not
theory.
How I saw it. I don't think it was like a communist thing.
Like critical race theory.
Most extreme examples of politicians doing this, like Nancy Pelosi.
Well, I'm not talking about politicians. I'm talking about the culture in like institutions, whether it be the media kowtowing to this or to colleges teaching students this stuff.
Sure.
What stuff? Wokeism?
The reason I think is because I think
They are like obsessed with this conversation about on-campus people. Anything, and I really I think Soy Pill should take the reins back and be like, we're here to talk about fascism, and now you're talking about like whether or not the woke people are on campus actually being like infected by the minds of professors, and it doesn't seem topical to what we're here to discuss, which is basically about your objection to people using the term fascism and your accusation that calling something a fascist is inherently, some kind of violent act. I'm going to continue for a couple more minutes.
politicians did it because it was the mainstream culture. Maybe we can move to another example after this, but like you would agree, like it was a little cringe when we had Nancy Pelosi and all of them wearing the African garb and like kneeling. Yeah, the Kunta Klaas, and it's like, is it Kunta or Quinta? I'm very unwoke.
Kunta, I don't know. Who knows?
Oh God, I hope they're not called that. This was not because they're like, we're deeply ingrained in like Black history and we truly understand it on a fundamental level and we truly believe. Like the reason they did that was because it was palatable to the mainstream culture, because the George Floyd stuff was like,
right. That's my point. Yeah.
Right. No, I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah.
But I don't understand how that would be like tied to maybe communism or like Marxism necessarily. And if it was, let's just say like all of that like critical theory and identity politics was all like stemming from communism, you would still need to point me to like the president is like deeply ingrained in passing policies based on this. And then I would say you might have a valid equivalence of what's happening with the fascism thing. I just wouldn't say it would disregard the point about the fascism.
Well, no, I was just curious because the way that you're sort of labeling fascist, and I was trying to just see whether it would apply to what I think is the same level of socialism that's sort of inculcating or going into the culture at the moment now.
Yeah. So the equivalent.
So how does the concept of fascism, how is that affected by the labeling of wokeism? So now you're not even talking about the concept of fascism. Is like, are you being consistent in calling out other ideologies and whether or not they're linked to certain politicians or something? Do any of you, can you even track what this conversation is about anymore? It's whether you're being consistent in like calling out wokeism. None of this affects whether or not the concept of fascism is, as was described, and accurately reflects the tendencies of the Trump administration and related elites. Has nothing to do with it. Whether he could be totally inconsistent in how he applies wokeism or the left wing, it has nothing to do with it. And this is what I mean. Like, they're pseudo intellectuals. People like Sitch, like they're not actually having a conversation right here. It's not a conversation. They're just yapping about the stuff they love to yap about, which is fine if you like that.
For me would be if you had a Democratic president who was following some like pretty core tenets of communism, was passing legislation based on this, and if most of the party was pretty on board with that, I would say, yeah, it'd pretty be valid to call these people communists. But I don't think we necessarily got there.
Well, with Trump and the fascist thing, because you asked me like what would have to happen for me to call it fascism? I would have to see, and I said this in the stream. I don't know if you heard when we were talking to Wick. At some point I said it. I don't call Trump a fascist because I do think there's specific ideological tenets that kind of complicate the conversation.
What does that mean? There are specific ideological tenets that complicate the conversation. Why don't you describe what they are? What are the ideological tenets that complicate the conversation?
You think he has authoritarian tendencies? And I said this in response to the elector scheme, like that you brought up. For me to feel very comfortable saying that Trump is a fascist or authoritarian, like just directly, I would want to see something more like, okay, he's taken an action, he's done something, which makes me think I can't vote anymore, or
What? So in order to know that you call him a fascist, he would need to do something to make you think you can't vote anymore before you would call him and again, just think about what that standard would be. That would mean even if Trump called himself a fascist right now, right, but didn't take that action yet, even though, by the way, he already said, what is the false elector scheme? The false elector scheme is vote stuffing. It's ballot stuffing. It's ballot stuffing of the real election, which is the elector's vote. He's trying to stuff the ballots with electors' votes. That's what the false elector scheme, guys, is Trump trying to go into the ballot and stuff a bunch of fraudulent votes in the ballot box. That is really what the false elector scheme is, right? Because the electors are the ones who actually vote for president. And what would you say if someone did fraudulent elections and did ballot stuffing for the election of the electors? Why would you consider that different? It's almost worse, right? To stuff the ballots of the real election. The real election is the electors voting for the president. That's our electoral college. And that's what putting in fake votes and stuffing the ballot is trying to do. That's what the fake elector scheme is. It's ballot stuffing. And what Sitch says is, in order for me to call someone a fascist, I would need to see him take an action that would make me voting, that would nullify my ability to vote, like the fake elector scheme, right? If you ballot stuff, you've just nullified your vote. You've made the election meaningless. But even if that were the standard, so even if that were the standard, Trump would have met it by his attempts. Are you saying that he has to actually complete it? He can't just attempt it? So that would be ridiculous, right? If your standard was, before I call him a fascist, he needs to actually complete it and bring about complete and total destruction of my voting ability. He can't just attempt it. He needs to actually complete it. So if that were the standard, if it were the standard that one tries to bring about a situation in which your vote means nothing, then we already have evidence of that with the fake elector scheme. That's ballot stuffing, right? Fake elector scheme, ballot stuffing. That's what your mind should instantly go to. They're stuffing the ballots of the electoral count. But that shouldn't be the standard, right? If Trump self-ID'd as a fascist and given all of the ideological leanings, you would have no problem calling him a fascist. It really isn't that he needs to take this one concrete action that's going to take away my vote. That is not any metric by which you, like, by that logic, again, we're stuck with the hypotheticals. We're stuck with not even hypotheticals. There aren't even hypotheticals. The examples of fascist parties running before they take power, which you would call them fascists before they take power, or you would call them fascists before they enact the Enabling Act, right? The Nazis take power in Weimar Republic, and before they're able to pass their reforms, banning the Communist Party, banning all these other parties, and it's day one, we've said the fascists have taken power in Germany. So you don't need that action before. That's not a standard that you would apply historically or contemporaneously. It makes no sense. And even if that were the standard, Trump would have met it through his attempt in the first election. And by the way, his other attempts are at least signaling now. So it is stupid on every conceivable level. And people act, oh, wow, holy crap. Doobie is single-handedly, I mean, this is crazy, guys. You understand what he just did? You understand what Doobie just did? Doobie, thank you so much for the subs. He started a movement. Doobie just funded the Defense of America. When you subscribe to the channel, what you're doing is you're defending America. Because I don't give a fuck if it's Hassan Piker, if it's Destiny, if it's Nick Fuentes. I'm here to defend your rights. I'm here to talk about the shit that matters, about what these MAGA assholes are doing, and Doobie just funded it. You just funded 200 more years of Republican government, and you get access to sick emotes. I really appreciate it, Doobie. Super appreciate you and the donations, the subs. This is all great stuff. The donor class. I am also, by the way, I'm disclosing that Doobie has paid me now. So this is me disclosing a form of revenue. He's given enough now that this is me disclosing a financial arrangement. 200 years, Rick and Morty. It's part of DEI. Oh, he has a ban appeal right now. We'll take a look at the appeal, J-Mac. This is a really funny joke, by the way, this sub-train thing. Very funny. But who pays Doobie? True. Some dark money interests. But thank you so much, Doobie. Okay, that was really sick. Thank you, Doobs. It's so much more chill than watching crazy Rob GPT. Is Rob live right now? Is Rob live? He's super live. Let me do my Rob. Hang on. What's my Rob impression? It's like. Fuck. Pressure's on. They tried to kill Charlie Kirk. I don't know anything to those guys, those shit libs. They cheered on the corruption. They love it. They don't care, but they know you do. Never care a shit about it. Ever. I call out my side. I never wanted Trump to appoint Bondi. I think she should fire her ass. They never cared, but they know you did. Thank you so much. Fist ups. All right. Where are we at? Pretty good. Thanks. I'm losing it. You're not squealing. Okay. Thank you. I'm going to mute the alerts, but thank you so much, DB. He has a guttural way of talking. He's talking. It's a little more squeaky. Love you, Pisco. Thank you so much.
Democratic process doesn't exist anymore at this point.
So
That
why
to
would
me
you
is,
say
like,
the
line where I'm
false
like, okay,
electors
we've gone into
scheme
fascism.
didn't meet that?
What'd you say?
I think it's a good point from Soypel, but he's accepting the standard here, which I don't think you need to accept. I don't think that you should accept this standard of until he takes that one move that is successful in taking away your vote. But I'm actually curious what he's going to say. But you shouldn't accept that standard. You're like, this is insane. You would never say that this is necessary before you're able to call something fascism. Maybe he says it's sufficient to call it fascism. But again, I just don't have a clear understanding of. It seems like they want something like a check mark. They're not comfortable with the notion of a flexible or a cluster concept, and so they want like a checklist and something that is like once you cross this specific point and only then. That's what it feels like.
Well, the January 6th, like, why would you say that the January 6th false electors didn't meet that? Like, were he to be, my understanding is, were he to be successful, he would have said, whatever you guys voted for in this country, I don't give a shit. I have made false electors and they're picking me now.
It's ballot stuffing, right?
Now, he didn't get away with it, thank God. But like, to me is like,
he tried.
This man made it so that the election didn't matter by stealing it. That's like the fascism right there to me.
Well, again, I'm drawing a line between fascism and authoritarianism.
But you just gave a principle, which was if they do something to nullify your ability to vote, then that's fascism. So we understand that you're making a distinction between fascism and authoritarianism, but you already clarified what would put it in one camp and not the other, Sitch. Sitch is such a dipshit. This guy's so fucking stupid.
Because authoritarianism, just like generic, someone seizing power, doesn't really have, not really tied to an ideology.
You know, you just described something that nullifying my vote would be enough to call it fascist. He tried to do that with the false elector scheme. He was stuffing ballots he was trying to, right?
Right.
Okay. Would you say
like
that
Trump
is at the
doing the
very
January,
least, like
like
that
Trump,
makes him a wannabe authoritarian?
Yeah, that's what if Trump was successful with overturning the electors,
If he was successful, he would call it fascist
and becoming president again, and like Pence signed off on it, Connor signed off on it, Supreme Court signed off on it, we'd be at a very different world. I think political violence would be rampant against.
Okay, is the conversation about whether we would be in the same world or whether violence would be rampant? Like, this is the kind of just utterance conversation that's happening. Like, this is not a real conversation. So now the conversation is about whether violence would be rampant. I thought this was a conversation about the semantic term fascism and whether we're culpable for using an accurate term or an inaccurate term, as their case is. They're saying it's inaccurate to call him fascist, and that's because we'd live in a different world if Trump were successful with the false elector scheme. And Soypill's trying to keep on track, but like, I'm sorry, we're not talking about whether it'd be rampant violence or whether or not we'd live in a different world.
In the streets against the right and people that support it.
And it's like I can see this kind of like, what are you like? Is a kind of confuzzled look. Like he knows this guy's being a weasel.
So my issue is, first of all, if you have a guy who's willing to at least try this, and he has no indication that he won't try again, considering he still really hasn't admitted defeat, This, at the very least, if you want to throw the word fascism out, is an indication this person is not to be trusted with anything.
And the implication of what Sitch was saying is we live in a different world. In other words, like, I would feel comfortable calling him fascist if he were successful. But why would you feel comfortable calling him like a fascist only if he's successful at doing the thing? Isn't the intent to do the thing enough for your purposes? This is so fucked, man. Like, he is getting absolutely crushed. But because he's calm and Soypill's calm, I guess people aren't seeing it, but this is wild.
You don't have to use the F words. Just, hey, this guy shouldn't ever be allowed to run for election again, or at the very least, no one should vote for him. And calling him a wannabe authoritarian or even a wannabe fascist is like very valid given that attempt. Yeah.
Well, as I said, I would have, if people were calling him a wannabe authoritarian or whatever, I don't know how Adam feels. I would have much less problem with it because
not much less problem. Would it be accurate or not? Weasel words, right? The question is, the whole distinction is, are you doing the same thing that the right is doing by doing like racial stereotypes, whatever? And the response is, well, this is accurate. And in response to, would it be accurate? Would you agree with it? It'd be like, oh, I'll have less of a problem with it. Weasel words to an audience captured idiot, really. From an audience captured idiot. We're not asking whether you'd have less of a problem. It's like, would it be accurate? Would it be accurate to call him an authoritarian? And he's like, well, I have less of a problem with it. Dude.
I don't think some people do, but I don't think it's like fascism, the one-to-one equation to Nazism that most Americans have.
It's not. You're right.
But that's the kind of the key argument here that we were talking about with Wick, is that if you're calling Trump a Nazi, then it does justify using violence against Trump.
No, it wouldn't. Why? Why? Why is it the case that you would necessarily be in favor of violence against Trump because assuming that he's a Nazi? But again, he's making the distinction saying that it's not one-to-one fascism and Nazism. That's the first thing, right? There could be many reasons why Nazism in the office, the justification wouldn't be violence. Number one is if we still have aspects of rule of law and if there are better, more effective ways at removing the threat, which we do have, right? Violence, in the current context, when we still do have ways to dislodge Trump that are peaceful, it's unjustified. Totally. We're not at that stage yet. And number two, it wouldn't be effective. Even if it were justified, it wouldn't be effective. So there's no necessary connection between calling Trump a Nazi and saying that violence is justified to kill him or to get rid of him. There's no necessary connection there at all. And also, Sitch himself is the one saying that Nazism and fascism are not one-to-one.
So I guess then the issue here is we shouldn't accurately describe him using fascism as it's understood in the legal context because colloquially everyone associates with the Nazi.
Oh, nice job, Soy. That's good. That's good.
Shouldn't use that term.
That's good.
Yes.
Wow. So he's saying, so this is Sitch's prescription is do not use an accurate term because of how people will react. That is the truth teller, Sitch. So that's a direct question and answer there. You just saw it, right? So Soypill asked it and their answer was yes.
It's understood in the legal context because colloquially everyone associates.
Oh wait, let me get the full question. I'm not taking this out of context.
The issue here is
the issue is the following.
We shouldn't accurately describe him using fascism as it's understood in the legal context because colloquially everyone associates with the Nazi, and because that is dangerous and might justify violence, we shouldn't use that term.
Yes.
Does he accept that argument from the pro-trans people? If you use the correct term to refer to these people, that might lead to bad outcomes, so we shouldn't use the accurate term. Have you ever heard Sitch or Adam accept this fucking argument before? So don't say an accurate thing because it might lead people to do violence. And that's an argument that Sitch and Adam agree with. Man, I can't even fuck around with this. Listen, guys, I got to get ready for dinner, so unfortunately I'm out of here. This has been great. The number's been great. I really, really super appreciate if you guys would like, subscribe. It means the world difference, especially if you go on Pisco Liddy TikTok, Pisco Liddy Instagram. That would mean the world to me. The subs today and the donos, Doobie especially, that have been absolutely amazing. The recent video on Majority Report is doing really well, and so I'm seeing very positive things. And so I really do appreciate all you guys. You guys are the best. and we'll keep putting shit out there. More to come tomorrow, and some debates that are coming as well. So it means the world to me. We're right into IRI and to Wick TV on YouTube. So much appreciated. I got to go have some dinner, celebrate some personal stuff. But yeah, thank you guys so much. Much love. Oh, wait. We got to wait for the raid. And send IRI your love. IRI is my dude. Hutch is my boy. IRI I can't even talk. IRI is my dude.